Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. Married the Black Widow at the beginning. Chapter 1. Tang Tianqi fell asleep while playing Marvel games. In the dimness, I seemed to hear the mouse click. When he opened his eyes again, he saw the Black Widow wearing a white wedding dress, smiling at herself. She looked even more stunningly beautiful against the backdrop of the wedding dress, and her charm had a sense of holiness. Tianqi looked around and saw a cathedral filled with people, mostly Westerners, with only one or two Eastern faces occasionally. A solemn voice sounded on the stage. "Miss Natasha, are you willing to marry this man and make him your husband? No matter in sickness or in health, poor or rich, you will always be loyal to him until the end of your life." Black Widow's charming face was filled with a happy smile, and she nodded gently, "Edo." The priest continued, "Mr. Tang Tianqi, are you willing to marry this woman and make her your wife? No matter in sickness or in health, poor or rich, love her and protect her until the end of your life." Tang Tianqi was confused. What's going on? Am I dreaming? It seems that I have played too many Marvel games and have been thinking about it day by day and dreaming about it at night. Apocalypse has always felt that the most pitiable person in Marvel is Black Widow. Black Widow's real name is Natasha Romanoff. According to the comic book setting, she should have been born in a fighting nation in 1928. She is only 8 years younger than the American captain. The body was transformed by the famous Secret Service organization Red Room, which greatly slowed down its aging rate, so that until the 21st century, decades later, his appearance remained the same. However, in the Black Widow movie, it is clearly stated that she was born in the 20s and is of a normal age. As for other experiences, it was much the same. She was brutally trained by the Red House since she was a child, and her ruthless methods have made her notorious in the Secret Service world. However, she is so beautiful that men cannot guard against her. If she is not careful, she loses her life in the beauty. Just like the female spider who will eat the male spider after giving birth, it is so ruthless that it is called the most poisonous spider, Black Widow. No normal woman would like such a vicious nickname as Black Widow. In fact, Natasha has never called herself Black Widow, which shows that she doesn't like such a code name. What's more terrible is that in order to prevent his female agent from being incited to rebel by the enemy, the Red Room removed her uterus, rendering her sterile. From then on, whether she was in the Red Room organization or later joined S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers, she could only be reduced to a glamorous thug with no personal happiness. Among the superheroes in the Avengers, she and Hawkeye have the lowest strength. They are both mortals and have no superpowers. They are the upper limit of ordinary people and the lower limit of superheroes. Facing an endless stream of powerful alien enemies, all male superheroes are excited and shouting, "The show is coming." Only she, with unnoticed fear and loneliness in her eyes, said, I don't see where the fun is." Unfortunately, in the world of superheroes, no one heard her words, and no one cared. Finally, in Avengers 4, he sacrificed himself to get the soul gem for the sake of the overall situation. Those who mourned her include comrades in arms, colleagues, and friends, but not her lovers or children. It can be said that the Black Widow seems to be stunningly beautiful and admired by everyone, but in fact she is the most lonely and pitiful one. "Ahem, Mr. Tang Tianqi, are you willing?" the priest reminded. Black Widow also looked puzzled. Tang Tianqi composed himself and said, "Edo. I am willing, willing. I just can't believe that God favors me so much. I, Tang Tianqi, swear to the universe to protect you with my life so that you will no longer be alone. I will no longer be harmed by any enemies. At the same time, no matter how cruel the reality is, I am willing to overcome all difficulties, have children together, and raise them to grow up." Black Widow's heart trembled. Tang Tianqi's words directly hit the soft spot of her soul. At this moment, Black Widow felt a little panicked. Could it be that he knew his origin? "Are you saying these words on purpose to seduce yourself?" According to the intelligence, it shouldn't be. Tang Tianqi's origin is very simple. Moreover, even if Tang Tianqi is an enemy agent, it is impossible for him to know the desire deep in his heart. Even Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., doesn't know. How could he know? Black Widow lived a lonely life. She didn't even know who her birth parents were. She only knew from the words of the general in the Red Room that they were dead and couldn't even find their graves. Those who work in their profession cannot have a family, friends, or have children. The beliefs they once instilled collapsed with the collapse of the old empire. Not knowing where she came from or where she was going, she felt helpless and extremely lacked a sense of belonging. It wasn't until she betrayed the Red Room that she settled down in S.H.I.E.L.D. And her reason for settling down is also very simple. She and other superheroes have said many times, "This is my home, and you are like my family." Her deepest desire is to have a home where she can live her wandering life. It's a pity that her career means that she cannot start a family like ordinary people. She is even afraid that the man she fell in love with will see his body when he returns home. "Now, in the name of God, I declare that you are officially married," the priest said. "Papa, Papa, Papa," there was a cheerful round of applause. Seeing that Tang Tianqi was still a little dazed, the priest had no choice but to remind him, "Now, you can kiss your wife." Then, the two of them had a long kiss that was almost suffocating. In this seemingly real and illusory happiness, the two toasted to the elders, relatives and friends among the guests. But Black Widow has not forgotten her mission. The two toasted to an elder. This elder was a Westerner with blue eyes and an eagle nose, and his eyes were like lightning. However, facing Tang Tianqi and Black Widow, his face showed a rare trace of elder kindness. However, he was still very vigilant and only drank the wine handed to him by his subordinates, without touching the wine served by the waiter. I brought my own wine bottles and glasses, which were incompatible with the styles at the wedding, and looked extremely expensive just by the look of them. Unfortunately, he met the Black Widow. When they were clinking glasses for a toast, a trace of undetectable powder floated from between Black Widow's fingernails into the other person's glass. Following the blessings of the elders in Zuian, they swallowed their stomachs together. Black Widow has performed countless missions in her life, some just and unjust, some even manslaughter, but she has never shown mercy. This time, she suddenly felt a little flustered and couldn't help but take a careful look at Tianqi. If my husband knew that I was using him, how would he react? Next is the bridal chamber. This night was very warm. Apocalypse has very good physical strength. Needless to say, Black Widow's physical strength is particularly good. Then, the bed was also very strong and did not collapse even after a night. The next day, Tang Tianqi woke up quietly. Seeing this Western-style bedroom and the remaining memories in my mind, I finally confirmed that I was not dreaming, but traveling through time. My predecessor came overseas with my elders to make a living. Too far from heaven, too close to the United States, this is the kingdom of God, the city of God. Because of the huge demand in the United States, drug traffickers are rampant in the kingdom of God. Almost everyone is selling drugs, and even the government forces can't do anything about it. As long as anyone dares to really ban drugs, the body may be hung under the overpass the next day. Even if government officials are like this, the lives of ordinary people are even more miserable. If they mess with drug dealers, they will be slaughtered like pigs and dogs at every turn. Tianqi doesn't remember why his elders came to this place. He only knows that life is difficult after coming. Because the elder had practiced Eastern martial arts and had Eastern wisdom, he became a bodyguard and military advisor for a big owl. Later, he died because he sacrificed his life to protect the big owl. This big owl is the elder who was toasted by the Black Widow at the wedding. Before he died, he made his last request to his boss, hoping that his children could live like ordinary people. The big owl didn't know whether it was to win people's hearts or out of moral justice, but he did let Tang Tianqi live like an ordinary person and open a flower shop in the suburbs. Given the chaos in the city of God, if ordinary people open a small shop, harassment and extortion will be minor. If they are not careful and offend the gangsters, they will be dead on the streets the next day. However, Tianqi's flower shop has been safe and sound for so many years. Behind this, the care of this boss is indispensable. This time, after hearing that Tianqi was getting married, Da Xiao, as an elder, came over to have a glass of wedding wine, which was considered as fulfilling the wish of Tianqi's elders. Thinking of this, Tianqi's heart thumped. Oops. Black Widow is beautiful, but she is not a good person. There must be a purpose for her coming here. I immediately turned on my phone and flipped through the local news, only to see the headline in red letters. Flying Eagle, the largest drug trafficker in the city of God, died of a heart attack last night. The person in the news picture is the big boss who came to have a wedding banquet yesterday. However, Apocalypse doesn't feel sad at all. Although this big owl named Fei Ying has protected him for many years, his elders paid for it with their lives, and there is no debt in love. In addition, Tianqi comes from the East and hates drug dealers deeply, so it is naturally impossible for him to have any feelings for this big drug dealer named Fei Ying. Alas, the wedding is indeed a fake, Tianqi thought. According to the memory of the predecessor, half a month ago, a woman named Roland came to the store to buy flowers. If the flowers are not attractive, people will be fascinated by them. She was just an ordinary person, how could she resist the beauty of the Black Widow? With a few tricks, the ex-girlfriend fell in love at first sight, and the two quickly fell in love. They decided to get married in a flash marriage only a week later, and invited relatives and friends to come and witness their love. Obviously, Black Widow knew about the relationship between Apocalypse's predecessor and Flying Eagle, and was sure that Flying Eagle would come, and according to local customs, he had to accept a toast from the newlyweds. Although Flying Eagle was cautious and did not drink the wine at the banquet, how could he possibly escape the Black Widow's methods? As for why he wanted to kill the Flying Eagle and send an ace like Black Widow, Tianqi doesn't know and doesn't need to know. The reason why a big drug dealer died is not worth investigating. Apocalypse jumped up from the bed. At this time, the Black Widow had long disappeared, and the faint fragrance remained on the quilt, witnessing the madness last night. There is a piece of white paper on the table in the room, which is written in Wanshou English. Chi, there's no need to come to me. This is all false. There is also a marriage certificate torn in half on the ground, with the official seal of the local government stamped in the lower right corner, and a happy photo of Black Widow and Apocalypse. Ding! The player and the superhero Black Widow are bound as husband and wife, connected by luck, and the luck value is +60. Successfully binding a superhero for the first time, you will receive a bottle of recovery potion as a gift. Tianqi was stunned for a moment, but fortunately, time travel welfare followed. However, the recovery potion given is also the least valuable item in the game. In the game, you usually buy dozens or hundreds of bottles. If you are injured or hit by some negative magic, you can drink one bottle and your health will be restored immediately. But in the real world, this bottle of recovery potion is equivalent to an extra life. But that's about it. Restoration potion cannot give Tianqi a sufficient sense of security. Throughout the entire Marvel universe, supervillains are ready to destroy planets at every turn, and there is an even more powerful boss behind them, Thanos. His lifelong pursuit is to destroy half of all life in the universe. Living in this world, one more life is not a guarantee. What's more, the recovery potion is only for recovery. If you die suddenly and there is no time to take it, it will be in vain. Picking up the marriage certificate, Tianqi smiled slightly. You are my woman and you still want to run away. How can it be that easy? Although I am still an ordinary person now, opportunities are everywhere in the Marvel universe. I am familiar with the plot. As long as I make good use of it, I may not have no chance of becoming stronger. When the time comes, he can justifiably kill S.H.I.E.L.D. and bring back his wife. Who dares to say no? But, what stage are you at now? How long until Thanos, the big boss, comes? Judging from the fact that Black Widow still has the leisure to spend half a month to set up a trap just to lure a mortal drug dealer into the situation, it is estimated that the war with the alien race has not yet begun, at least not until the New York battle against Loki's alien army in Avengers 1 before. After thinking for a moment, Tianqi picked up the marriage certificate and glued it carefully. Then, sell all the family property, sell the flower shop, and convert all the peso currency of the Kingdom of God into US dollars. In order to be quick, whether it was selling a store or exchanging currency, Tianqi was deceived a lot, especially when exchanging US dollars on the black market, almost half the price. But Tianqi doesn't care. A small amount of money is nothing compared to future life and death. With about $2 in hand, Tianqi contacted a local smuggler and prepared to smuggle him into the United States. Many major events in the Marvel Universe take place in the United States. If you want to find opportunities, you can only go to the United States nearby. There is no chance at all in God's own country, a country that has nothing to do with shit. In other countries, smugglers are hidden, but the smugglers here have stores directly in the busy city and are known to the locals. The snakehead was a brown Westerner, tall and thick. He glanced at Tianchi and said, "Orientalist. This is rare. Please pay $10,000. Apocalypse. Isn't it $1,000? The country of God is poor and backward, and the local people's income is not high. Generally, people who smuggle themselves risk their lives. For them, 1,000 United States dollars is a huge sum of money, let alone. You are from the East. Your goal is too obvious. You need to pay more." Just when Tianchi was about to say something, the snakehead said impatiently, "If you hand over, or if you don't hand over, get out." Tianchi had no choice but to take out a thick bundle of $1 from his clothes. People here are used to bundling large amounts of money into a roll for easy carrying. The snakehead was just trying to scare him randomly, but he didn't expect Tianchi to actually take out US dollars, and his eyes suddenly became brighter. "Go and wait over there. Don't leave. We'll leave at night." A few hours later, the sun sets. The snakehead shouted to Tianchi, "You, come out." Tianchi felt bad and had to say, "What are you doing?" The smuggler said, "Check the package. This is smuggling. Do you think it's tourism? I threw all these away. Also, in order to prevent you from being a police informant, you have to search yourself." Tianchi was furious. "Why? There are so many of them, just looking for me." The snakehead said, "Just because you are an Easterner. They are all natives of the kingdom of God and my brothers and sisters. Only you are an outsider." With that said, regardless of Tianchi's objections, several big men grabbed the backpack, then pressed Tianchi against the wall and searched him. In fact, many people who smuggle drugs are transporting drugs for some underground groups, and they have a lot of them or even in their bodies. They little smugglers know this very well. Under normal circumstances, how could they dare to search someone? If a drug trafficking donkey says that his goods have been intercepted by a smuggler, and he cannot explain himself clearly, the consequences will be endless, and it may lead to a fatal disaster. As for informants, that's even more impossible. Anyone with any brains knows that when looking for an informant, you must find an inconspicuous person, preferably a local person. An Easterner like Tianchi, in a country full of Western faces, is a torch in the darkness. Wherever he goes, people will look at him curiously. How could he be an informant? Tianchi understood that he was motivated by money. "I only blame myself for being too eager. When I was asked to pay $1, I was bluffed by the other party and the secret was revealed. If I had insisted that I didn't have that much money, turned around and left, or pretended to pay an extra $100 or $200, I guess it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Alas, I still lack experience in the arena." Tianchi sighed in his heart. In his previous life, Tianchi came from a peaceful and prosperous age, and he was still an otaku. How could he know this? The smuggler quickly found the remaining $1 from Tianchi, threw his luggage all over the floor, and took away everything he liked. After making sure that there was no more money, he pushed Tianchi back into the crowd with satisfaction. Tianchi didn't dare to react and sat in the crowd of smugglers holding back his anger. If Tianchi is really reluctant to part with the $1 and insists on getting it back, he may not even be able to save his life. The United States, also known as the Eagle Empire, uses the eagle as its totem. It is located in the north of the Kingdom of God and borders the border. The difference between the rich and the poor in the two countries is like a world of difference. One side is extremely rich and is known as the world's hegemon, while the other side is full of poverty, drug dealers are rampant, and ordinary people are in danger. Therefore, countless people smuggled into the Eagle Empire to make a living, and of course, many more were drug traffickers. In the middle of the night, a large truck filled to the brim picked them up. Soon, we arrived in the wild and from a distance we could see the lights of the U.S. border checkpoint. Under the guidance of the snakehead, a group of people quietly entered an underground tunnel. After coming out, we were already in the United States. Suddenly, there was a whooshing sound in the air, and a huge lighting lamp illuminated the area like daylight. "Don't move. You are suspected of crossing the U.S. border illegally. Please cooperate with the investigation. You would be a fool if you really didn't move." Dozens of stowaways, including Tianchi, dispersed in a hurry. Da da da. Bullets from the aircraft's machine guns rained down. Ah, Help. Immediately, some of the stowaways were shot to death, and some were hit in their limbs. The huge warheads of the aircraft-mounted machine guns completely broke off their hands and feet, causing blood and flesh to spatter. Apocalypse's hair stood up, and he rushed towards the woods not far away. As long as it can break into the woods and still have a glimmer of life, it will be a living target for helicopters if it is exposed in the wilderness. Fortunately, Apocalypse was alone, and there were not many bullets fired at him, so he escaped into the woods without any danger. Behind the grove is a large forest mountain range that stretches for hundreds of kilometers, making it impossible to search. This is one of the reasons why smugglers choose this area to stow away. Ha! Tianchi gasped, relying on the cover of the trees, and quickly moved deeper into the woods. The helicopter hovered in the sky for a while, its searchlight scanning here and there, and finally gave up. After all, hundreds of thousands of people enter the country illegally every year, and it is impossible to search the entire mountain range for just one or two small miscellaneous fish. After several days of sneaking around, Apocalypse finally walked out of the woods and entered a small city on the border of the United States. He was temporarily safe. At this time, a morning news caught his attention. The blonde female host said in front of the camera, "The military exchanged fire with unknown enemies on the campus of Culver University." The military said this was a rumor. But two sophomore students witnessed the entire incident and filmed it with their mobile phones. As he spoke, the camera zoomed out, revealing the messy and damaged grass and buildings. Later, two male students came to the camera, shocked. The giant was covered in green and was 3 or 4 meters tall. The bullets hit him and bounced away like a toy BB gun. Even the .50 caliber artillery did not hurt him at all. The armored vehicle looked like a child's in front of him. The toys were easily overturned, and later the army even deployed sonic cannons. Later, two male students excitedly showed the video taken by their mobile phones to the camera. At this time, the pixels of mobile phone cameras were still poor, but they still could not hide the Hulk's several-meter-tall green body, which was full of a sense of brutal oppression. After watching it again, when Tianchi refreshed it again, the video had disappeared. In the early days, the United States was still very secretive about superheroes and did not allow any evidence to be leaked. It was not until later that the war between superheroes and supervillains became more and more intense that it could no longer be covered up, and the blockade had to be abandoned. After Apocalypse thought for a moment, this was obviously the plot of The Incredible Hulk 2. Hulk Bruce Banner went to find his girlfriend Elizabeth Betty, but unexpectedly the military set a trap and tried to capture him alive. The result is obvious. Dr. Banner transforms into the Hulk, smashes and kills, and breaks out. If Elizabeth hadn't been affected by the chaos and fell into a coma, and the Hulk subconsciously wanted to protect her, General Ross's team would have suffered even more serious killings. Hulk 2 is a relatively early plot of Marvel, and the entire super war has not yet begun. Tianchi breathed a sigh of relief, leaving some time for himself, so a plan took shape in his heart. The United States is known as a country on wheels, and it is difficult to move without vehicles. Apocalypse is now penniless and has no choice but to stick out his thumb on the side of the road and ask for a ride. Apocalypse is an Oriental. Orientals may be discriminated against in the West, but basically no one is afraid of him. After all, Orientals are known to be law-abiding and have the lowest crime rate among any race. The JC here always looked nervous when he saw Brother Hay, and would draw his gun at any time, but he was quite relaxed when facing the Oriental people. We drove and ate along the way, from the border of the Kingdom of God, traveling day and night, across half of the United States, to New York City. Apocalypse's goal is very clear, it's the Hulk's blood. In The Incredible Hulk 2, Dr. Banner sent a blood sample to Dr. Samuel Stern of Gingham College in New York in order to remove gamma rays from his body. Dr. Stern is also amazing. The blood samples sent by the Hulk were very few, but he insisted on using genetic technology to test and purify them. The concentration was higher than the Hulk's own blood, and the entire laboratory was filled with replicas. According to the development of the plot, the Hulk will come to his door and ask for his help in eliminating the gamma-ray energy in his body. At the same time, a special soldier of the military, Bronsky, will come over and force the doctor to inject him with the Hulk's blood, eventually transforming into a gray giant named Abomination. The final battle between the two giants. However, this has not happened yet. Apocalypse is playing with this time difference. He wants to get the Hulk's blood in advance before the plot happens. The university environment is very relaxed and unprotected, and Tianchi quickly inquires about Dr. Stern's laboratory. Tuck 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 tuck. Apocalypse knocked on the door. Who is it? It was Dr. Stern who opened the door. Doctor, I want to do an experiment with you. Not today, the graduate assistants are all off work. If you need anything, come back tomorrow. Dr. Stern thought he was a student at the university. Tianchi smiled slightly. He did not expect the doctor to be obedient. He forced the door open and came in. He turned his palm and pointed a pistol at Dr. Stern. The doctor was a little frightened. What are you going to do? This is a laboratory and there is no money. I don't want money, I want Mr. Green's blood. Mr. Green is the screen name used by the Hulk, and Dr. Stern uses Mr. Blue. Banner himself is being hunted, so of course he won't use his real name, and Dr. Stern's research is illegal, so he naturally doesn't dare to use his real name. Dr. Stern's expression changed. How do you know Mr. Green? It's not important. I want you to inject Mr. Green's blood for me. Aren't you in need of a human experiment? I'll be your test subject. No, all the animals tested exploded and died. It is far from the stage of human experimentation. It is too dangerous. You don't need to worry about it. Young man, although I don't know why you are doing this, the energy level of this blood is too strong. Human nucleic acid chains cannot absorb gamma energy at all. I am 100% sure that the human body cannot bear it and will eventually burst and die. Apocalypse smiled, and Dr. Stern probably never dreamed that in his only experiment in the original plot, the man not only did not die, but also turned into a hateful giant. Stop talking nonsense, just do it. In order to avoid a long night and many dreams, Apocalypse stopped talking and pointed a gun at Dr. Stern. Of course, ordinary people cannot bear the blood of the Hulk. Even the biggest villain in The Incredible Hulk 2, Blonsky, has been injected with Captain America's imitation super serum twice. He is already half a super soldier before he can bear it. He eventually became the Abomination giant, but he could never return to his normal size like the Hulk. With a thought in Tianchi's mind, he took out the recovery potion from the storage compartment in his mind. Unfortunately, the storage compartment could not store foreign objects, otherwise the $1 would not have been robbed. Restoration potions can remove all negative damage. This is also the reason why he dares to take a gamble. Tianchi put the recovery potion in his mouth and lay on the experimental bed. Young man, your hands and feet need to be bound to prevent you from struggling in severe pain. Dr. Stern pointed to the straps beside the bed. He didn't dare to tie it up without Tianchi's permission, lest the misunderstanding be destroyed by a shot. Tianchi said, "No need. You bring the blood with the highest concentration and the most powerful force." Okay. After a while, Dr. Stern came out with a bunch of large and small glass bottles and said, "Let's test a small dose first to see the effect." "I want it all." Dr. Stern was stunned. If there is any possibility of success in injecting a small dose of blood, if all of it is injected, the quantity alone will almost burst a person's body, not to mention the gamma energy contained in it. He seriously suspected that this young man was here to commit suicide. Dr. Stern was about to cry. When the police see an exploded corpse lying in my laboratory, how should I explain it? They must have thought that I was a scientific madman who kidnapped innocent people for human experiments. And the research I did was illegal, and I couldn't defend it even if I wanted to. God, I was really forced, but at gunpoint, he had to do it. In the original plot, Blonsky only injected a tube of blood and was already fighting the Hulk back and forth. Although the side effects were obvious, his strength was not compromised. The amount of injection required by Tianchi was at least 10 times that of Blonsky. His hands, feet, body, and neck were all connected with needles. Accompanied by the mechanical sound of the injection machine, the highest concentration and highest dose of Hulk's blood was continuously poured into Apocalypse's body. Because the dose was too much, the energy of the gamma rays had not yet taken effect. Apocalypse had already swelled up, like a balloon that had been blown to the limit, and was about to explode. Fortunately, the gamma energy took effect very quickly. Almost at the same time, the blood vessels all over Tianqi's body swelled, covering his whole body like a spider web, and streams of green blood scurried under his skin like reptiles. Huge energy drives the blood to run at high speed, and the heart rate explodes, jumping from 70 to 300, 400, 500. Boom, 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 heartbeat like a drum. Apocalypse's mind was washed away by this violent energy and he almost lost his mind. But now is not the time, when gamma energy is not yet maximized. Apocalypse's body is turning green and getting bigger. The mechanical experimental bed made of fine steel could not bear Tianqi's weight, making a squeaking metal sound and could be dismembered at any time. The mutated body is getting bigger and bigger, and the original mechanical bed is like a toy and can no longer hold Apocalypse. He grew to almost 3 times the size of the Hulk before he stopped getting bigger. Even when he was half lying, his head almost touched the ceiling. At this time, it has reached the edge of the limit. If you give it another second, you will either lose your mind and forget to take the recovery potion, or you will explode and die. It's now. Crack. The glass bottle in his mouth shattered, and the recovery potion and glass shards were swallowed by Tianqi in one gulp. In an instant, Apocalypse's whole body emitted green light, illuminating the experiment until he could not open his eyes. Green light shines through the windows and onto the campus outside. Fortunately, everyone knows that this is a laboratory, so some strange phenomena are not surprising and no one comes to investigate. When the green light dissipated, Apocalypse returned to his normal human form, lying naked on the experimental bed. Apocalypse carefully feels the power in his body. He is not sure how big it is now. Between the loosening and tightening of the palm, there was a faint sound of air explosion, and the air was directly squeezed and exploded in the palm. The abominable giant was slightly stronger than the Hulk without much injection, and the amount he injected was more than 10 times that of Blonsky, so he should be stronger than the two of them no matter what. Apocalypse's tense heartstrings finally loosened. From now on, he is no longer a passer-by in Marvel, and he has the power to protect himself in the future super war. Thank you, Doctor. Tianqi put on a white laboratory coat. Incredible, incredible. How did you do it? What was that green light just now? This is completely unscientific. Please tell me. I must record it in the test data. Dr. Stern completely forgot that Apocalypse had threatened him just now, and now he was only thinking about scientific matters. Tianqi said, I can tell you, but I have a condition. What condition? Just say it. I need you to keep it secret. You are not allowed to reveal any information about me to outsiders without my permission. Okay, I promise not to say anything, including what you pointed a gun at me just now. Tianqi didn't know that Dr. Stern was doing illegal research, so how could he expose his shortcomings? That's good. The reason is, I took a potion. Tianqi smiled evilly. What potion? Can you tell me the formula? I'm willing to pay any price. Tianqi said, as long as you don't reveal my information, you may consider it in the future. In order not to be exposed prematurely and be targeted by other supervillains, I used this method to catch the doctor for now. After all, I am not a villain, so I can't kill him for no reason. Dr. Stern was frantic and helpless, so he had to take the initiative to send his contact information, and beg Tianqi in a low voice to bring the potion when he was free and let him test it. In front of science, he would rather be a humble servant. In this regard, Tianqi respects him. However, he didn't know if he would be able to get the recovery potion in the future. He tried many times, but the system failed to respond. So far, he only provided 1 bottle of recovery potion, which was very stingy. If there were many in the future, he wouldn't mind letting Dr. Stern test them. It would be great if they could be mass-produced. After walking out of Gabang College, Tianqi entered a Golden Arch roast chicken restaurant, well, although it's not called that in the West. After eating 30 servings of Family Bucket in a row, I stopped. The clerk and the people around him were dumbfounded. The amount of food he ate was heavier than half a person, but the Oriental man's belly was nowhere to be seen. As he becomes stronger, he also consumes a lot of energy, absorbing energy from food at a rate dozens of times that of ordinary people. At this moment, there was a commotion outside. Run, there's someone shooting over there. Everyone, evacuate quickly, the army is arresting criminals, hurry. Tianqi was stunned, couldn't it be such a coincidence? As soon as he walked away, the Hulk and Elizabeth came to see Dr. Stern. If I had arrived half a day late, I might have missed it, and the laboratory would have been cleaned by the military. In the original plot, the Hulk and his girlfriend came to Dr. Stern and asked him to help eliminate gamma energy from the body. Dr. Stern first extracted the blood from the Hulk's body, mixed a homemade antidote into the blood separator, neutralized the gamma energy, and then reinfused it back into the body. However, this method treats the symptoms but not the root cause and can only be temporarily eliminated. But neither Dr. Stern nor the Hulk know that the Hulk's gamma energy is emitted from DNA, and it cannot be completely eliminated unless he dies. The Hulk was also unlucky. As soon as he was suppressed, Elizabeth's father, General Ross, found him and put him down with an anesthetic shot. General Ross never thought that it would be so easy this time, and he happily tied the Hulk onto the helicopter and flew away. Apocalypse glanced at Elizabeth from afar. Sure enough, she was as gentle and intellectual as in the movie. Her big watery eyes were full of tenderness. Only she could calm the Hulk's violent anger and slowly transform the Hulk back into Bruce Banner. Dr. Nah. However, Apocalypse felt uncomfortable when he thought that Black Widow would do the rest of the comforting work. His wife goes to comfort another man, no matter how she thinks or reacts. Of course, Black Widow didn't think so. This was just a fake marriage during the mission. She had never acknowledged her husband. Tianchi touched the marriage certificate in his bag and smiled evilly. What if he didn't want to admit that he was in chaos and finally gave up? You're married to me and you still want to run away. Scumbag, your husband is here, come home with me. While thinking wildly, with a loud boom, a machine was thrown out of the window of Dr. Stern's laboratory and hit the ground hard. A sound like a giant subwoofer came, booming throughout the street. Ha, 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 power. Power. This is power. Ha, 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 ha. Not even eating a meal can make you pure. Tianchi cursed secretly. Obviously, the plot of The Incredible Hulk 2 inches appeared, and Blonsky transformed into Abomination. As a fighting madman, Blonsky dared to face the Hulk when he was an ordinary soldier, which shows how crazy he is. In the end, the difference in strength was too great, and he was kicked away by the Hulk, hit a tree, and suffered fractures all over his body. But such courage was also appreciated by General Ross, who injected him with more serum. But he was not satisfied. This time he took the opportunity and forced Dr. Stern to inject him with the Hulk's blood. Poor Dr. Stern. Within half a day, 2 people came over to get blood, and it was too late to escape. This time, Dr. Stern was knocked to the ground by Abomination, and a few drops of blood with strong gamma rays dripped on his head. His head suddenly swelled up and became as big as a bucket, undulating like a soft water ball. Apocalypse doesn't know what happened to Dr. Stern later, because he never appeared in subsequent Marvel movies. Apocalypse thought for a while, and instead of chasing Abomination, he came to the laboratory first. After all, Dr. Stern had just helped him, so he still came to see him. Dr. Stern's head was bulging high, like an alien, his expression was painful, and he was being transformed by superpower. This is a wrong place and it is not advisable to stay for a long time. Apocalypse took him to the other side of the city in a few leaps under the cover of night. Ding! Save 1 life and receive a bottle of recovery potion as a reward. Ha! Save people and give them recovery potions. This system is stingy, but it is quite kind. Seeing that Dr. Stern's head was still mutating, Apocalypse left the recovery potion behind and said, if you can't help it, just drink this bottle of potion. Stern's eyes brightened with pain. Is it the one you drank just now? Can it restore you to a normal person from the mutation? Such a magical potion, I want to study it. It's up to you, Tianchi said lightly and left immediately. Since the system judged that it had saved Stern, the brain mutation would not threaten his life. As long as he could endure the pain, he could do whatever he wanted. The battle between Abomination and Hulk is still waiting for him over there. Gebin College, nearby streets. The hateful giant was smashing things happily. The infinite power gave him endless ambition. The soldiers and armored vehicles brought by the general were vulnerable to him. Ha, 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 a bunch of trash. Find me a decent opponent, Hulk, come out. The roar of hatred spread throughout the city, and General Ross, who who had just left, changed his face when he heard it. General Ross cursed in his mind. It took me several years of hard work to catch the Hulk while he was unable to transform. Before he could leave, an even stronger one came. Will this allow anyone to live? Tianqi saw that the Hulk hadn't arrived yet, so he took advantage of this gap to earn some recovery potions first. Walking quietly in front of Abomination, wherever he hit, Apocalypse would quickly take away the passers-by in front of him. Many passers-by had no time to escape, and when they were desperate, something suddenly flashed in front of them, and the person was already in midair. When they landed again, they were already more than a dozen blocks away. Some people foolishly waited in their cars because of traffic jams, unaware of the impending danger. Apocalypse didn't waste any time. He pulled the car door completely with his hand. The seat belt was like a marshmallow in front of him. He ripped it off and pulled it out without caring about the screams of the people in the car. Ding, ding, ding. Save a life and reward 1 bottle of recovery potion. A series of prompts sounded in his mind, and Tianqi was very happy. There must be at least dozens of bottles. Even if you can't use it all, it's still worth a lot of money if you sell it. At the same time, General Ross, Dr. Banner, and Elizabeth on the helicopter noticed Apocalypse through the monitor. Elizabeth was curious. Dad, it seems that there are people with superpowers saving people. Are they from the military? General Ross shook his head. Although the picture is blurry, you can vaguely see that he is an Oriental. We don't have such a person. Elizabeth watched Tianqi under surveillance, moving people away like ants moving, trying her best to save the lives of passers-by, and she couldn't help but feel a little moved. Dr. Banner said, General, this is not the way to go. This mysterious man has limited abilities and can only take people a dozen blocks away. If the giant is not solved, something big will happen soon. Everyone has seen Hulk jump, and he jumped several mountains. They mistakenly thought that Apocalypse's power was too far behind Hulk. Who knows, this is just because Apocalypse did not fully control his own power and did not dare to jump around. Banner said, I'll do it. Elizabeth hurriedly said, you have just been injected with the antidote and cannot transform. Don't go back and die. Banner, I can't watch innocent people die because of me. With that said, he jumped out from a height of hundreds of meters and fell down. At this time, the hateful giant who had been smashing all the way finally found Tianqi and growled, nasty fleas. A small car was thrown at him, but Tianqi easily dodged it. Seeing this, the hating giant became even more angry. A little flea actually dodged his attack. Boom boom boom. The hateful titan, like a prehistoric beast, rushed towards Tianqi. Wherever he passed, the car was turned into a discus by his foot. At this moment, with a bang sound, a humanoid object fell from the sky, and happened to fall between the Abomination Titan and Apocalypse. It is the untransformed Dr. Banner. Hatred was stunned. What kind of operation is this? Do you want to kill yourself by killing yourself? Hatred stared at the deformed corpse on the ground and sniffed it curiously. At this time, his IQ was about the same as that of a child. After watching it for a while, I felt it was boring, so I crossed over Banner's corpse and continued the pursuit. Unexpectedly, just as he stepped over, a huge green hand stretched out from the ground. Your opponent is me. Dr. Banner transforms into the Hulk. The Hulk grabbed Abomination's feet from behind and threw them to the ground, creating a huge crater. Abomination lay in the huge pit, smiling instead of angry, and shouted, ha, 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 this is so decent. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Boom. Two monsters collided. The aroused air waves even affected the helicopter at a height of meters, causing it to sway unsteadily and the instrument to continuously warn with beeps and beeps. Boom, 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 boom. Have fun. This is power. This is a decent opponent. Ha, 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 come again. Hulk, you are too noisy. Two humanoid monsters were fighting in the street. The surrounding buildings were like paper, and they collapsed wherever they passed. Countless large craters were blasted out of the ground, and even underground pipes were blasted out. Water sprayed into the air more than 10 meters high. Tianqi didn't go far. He subconsciously looked down at himself, shook his head and smiled bitterly. He had finally unlocked the secret of the Hulk's pants himself. In the previous life, People often joke that the Hulk's pants would never fall off no matter whether he transformed or fought, and they were known as one of Marvel's top 10 unsolvable mysteries. But in the real world, such a thing does not exist at all. Such settings in previous lives were just for the sake of screen harmony. The green lump under Hulk's crotch was dangling in front of his eyes. Apocalypse felt like Thor saw Hulk naked in Thor 3. This will be etched in my mind for a lifetime and will never go away. On the contrary, although the clothes on Abomination's body were also torn apart, there was nothing underneath. It seemed that it had been absorbed during the mutation. It seems that this is the price of forced mutation. Abomination and Hulk don't have any moves, they just use their infinite strength to attack each other. Even a layman like Tianchi couldn't stand it. With the same strength, he could treat the two of them like monkeys. Occasionally, Hulk will pick up a car as a weapon, either for defense or as a weapon. I don't care about hatred at all, just keep hitting with a pair of giant fists. Each punch was like a cannonball, and a huge explosion of air spread throughout the city. As Hate punched more and more, the spine on his back was like a ferocious bone dragon, seeming to burst out of his body. Da 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 da. Suddenly countless bullets poured down from the sky, shooting at Abomination and Hulk. It's a pity that bullets that can stop ordinary people are as powerless as toy guns in front of the Abomination and the Hulk. Orientals, why are you standing still? Run away. Elizabeth's voice came from the sky. Tianchi smiled and said, "Thank you, don't worry about me and leave quickly." HMPH, fly. Abomination protected his eyes with one hand, and pulled up a lamppost with the other hand. With a wave of his giant hand, the lamppost roared towards the helicopter. No, the Hulk yelled and threw himself towards the lamppost. Unfortunately, he was too late to intercept, and his big hand brushed the end of the lamppost, and his girlfriend Elizabeth was about to die. Bah! The lamppost was less than 3 meters away from the helicopter, and was stopped by a slender hand. It was Tianchi. How is this possible? Elizabeth and General Ross, father and daughter, couldn't believe their eyes. The lamppost was close to the speed of sound and had a huge force, no less than a cannonball. It was stopped by a hand without making any progress. General Ross's pupils shrank. He has been chasing the Hulk for many years, and he knows best how terrifying this kind of power and speed is. Ding! Save 5 lives and reward 5 bottles of recovery potion. In addition to Elizabeth and the general, there were also a pilot and 2 soldiers on the helicopter. Apocalypse smiled at Elizabeth. You should stay away. Bullets have no effect on them. Then fall to the ground. In the original plot, in order to help the Hulk, the helicopter lowered its flying altitude and used a Gatling gun to attack the Abomination. The helicopter was pulled down by the Abomination. The aircraft crashed and everyone died. Of the 5 people on board, only Elizabeth and General Ross survived. Unexpectedly, the arrival of Apocalypse changed the plot, and the helicopter came to join the battle. Character determines behavior. Everyone has his own behavioral inertia, and General Ross is no exception. Pull up, pull up. General Ross came to his senses and shouted hurriedly. Seeing that his girlfriend was fine, the Hulk felt relieved, and was beaten back by hatred. In the original plot, Banner came back to stop the Abomination. He originally wanted to protect ordinary people, but he was still defeated. It was not until Elizabeth was about to be killed by the Abomination that he unleashed his potential and strangled her unconscious. The angrier the Hulk gets, the more powerful he becomes. However, now that the civilians have been transferred by Apocalypse, and the girlfriend crisis has been resolved by Apocalypse, the Hulk has nothing to worry about, but has lost the motivation to fight. Seeing this, Tianchi felt that it was time. You guys are almost done fighting, it's time for me to take action. Hatred turned his head and showed his sharp white teeth at him. Ha, ha, ha. You are qualified. From a distance of tens of meters, he punched Tianchi with a punch. The person followed the punch, and his body suddenly accelerated. When the fist reached the point of maximum force, Abomination had already arrived in front of Tianchi. Apocalypse didn't hide or dodge, he stretched out his palm and faced him straight up. Boom! The fists and palms struck each other, as if a cannonball exploded, and the shock wave blew away the surrounding cars. The cement ground beneath the feet of Abomination and Apocalypse cracked for tens of meters. Compared with the fist of hatred, Apocalypse's palm is as small as a baby, but the giant fist of hatred cannot move even an inch. Apocalypse felt it. If this was the full power of hatred, he would be at least 3 times stronger than him. He would have injected more than 10 times more blood than him, but his strength did not increase 1 to 1, it was a bit less. If General Ross knew what Apocalypse was thinking, he would probably roll his eyes regardless of his majesty. His power of hatred is a little stronger than the Hulk, and Apocalypse is 3 times as strong as him. Isn't this too little? Apocalypse gestured with his hand and pointed at Abomination and Hulk. You guys, come together and finish the work as soon as possible. The Hulk shook his big head. No fight. You are a friend, no fight. Although the Hulk lacks the intelligence of Dr. Banner's personality, he can still distinguish between basic enemies and friends. Apocalypse had just saved his girlfriend, so naturally he didn't want to fight with Apocalypse. What's more, Apocalypse's power comes from the blood of the Hulk. The Hulk has an inexplicable sense of intimacy. Even in the transformed state, he is not hostile to Apocalypse. It's not up to you. Apocalypse steps forward, attacking both the Abomination and the Hulk. Elizabeth on the helicopter was shocked. Is he crazy? Why did he even fight the Hulk? General Ross also watched nervously. At first, he thought that the man who saved him was a friendly force, but he even beat the Hulk, and it seemed that it was difficult to distinguish between friend and foe. At the same time, he was thinking, if he was an enemy, how should he deal with him? The Hulk didn't want to fight back at first, but after being punched a few times by Apocalypse, his head smashed through the ground, and he took a mouthful of reinforced concrete. His anger suddenly rose. Roar, roar, roar. 2 monsters, one big and one small, roaring wantonly. A huge roar spread throughout New York City. The whole city was in chaos. The sound was huge and violent, coming from nowhere. It seemed like a monster would appear around you at any time. Many people panicked and looked for shelter everywhere. On the streets, cars collided and horns honked. General Ross looked at the sky and had a headache. The disaster tonight was too great and he didn't know how to end it. On the ground, there are 3 monsters. Apocalypse. Haha. Hulk, you are too slow. Hulk. Who? Friends, will fight too. Ho. Hatred. Ha, 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 have fun. Come again. With that said, he jumped up again. Boom. Apocalypse whipped his leg and sent Abomination flying dozens of meters, and blood actually flowed from the corner of his mouth. Just now, I hated being attacked by the army with RPGs. I fought against the Hulk, but not a drop of blood was shed. I didn't expect to be beaten by Apocalypse. Hatred is not afraid of retaliation and pounces on him again. Ha, 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 so happy. So happy. This power is enough. Boom, 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 boom. Apocalypse did not dodge or evade, but used the wildest fists to fight, not knowing any moves, regardless of damage, and wantonly squandering the power he had just gained. One punch would often send the Abomination and the Hulk flying hundreds of meters. His hatred was endless. He was knocked away many times and flew back again and again, perfectly inheriting Blonsky's bellicose personality before his transformation. The 2 giants besieged Apocalypse, but still fell into a disadvantage. Abomination and Hulk were blasted back again and again. Wherever it passed, the ground exploded one after another, and no piece of it was left intact. After fighting for a while, Apocalypse determined that his strength was more than 3 times greater than Abomination and Hulk, and began to experiment with some moves. Although I am not a martial arts practitioner, as an Oriental, I have been exposed to it since I was a child, and I know how to use some simple moves even if I have never practiced them. The basis of all martial arts moves is strength and speed. Ordinary people have neither strength nor speed, and their moves are like fire without roots. They cannot use them even if they know them. Now, Apocalypse has both. Although his moves are not very clever, they are still much better than 2 bulls charging into each other. Tian Chi was experimenting with Wing Chun and Tai Chi for a while. Many martial arts moves he had learned from watching movies suddenly became clear to him. The Abomination and the Hulk were played around. Either all the power cannot be used, or it is used by Apocalypse to fight, causing Abomination and Hulk to take damage from each other, making the 2 of them even more furious. The entire ruins were filled with hateful and incompetent roars of the Hulk. On the sky, General Ross's eyelids twitched when he saw it, and he could no longer describe it as shocked. Just chasing one Hulk caused countless casualties and hundreds of helicopters, tanks, and armored vehicles were lost. Even the most advanced sonic cannon couldn't hit the Hulk. And now there are two more monsters that are only strong but not weak. What's even worse is that this Oriental man is still a normal human body and still maintains his sanity, which is even more terrifying than the Hulk hating the two of them. Unless nuclear weapons are used, it is impossible to capture this Oriental. Ordinary missiles, as long as Apocalypse discovers them at the last second, will be able to escape the core explosion zone instantly with his strength and speed, but will not be able to cause enough damage. Only nuclear weapons covering dozens or hundreds of kilometers in radius, coupled with tens of millions of degrees of high temperature in the center that can melt all matter, can ensure a one-hit kill. On Apocalypse's side, it was discovered that the Hulk's strength was slowly growing as his anger rose, seemingly without end. This is the Hulk's natural ability. The angrier he is, the stronger he becomes. Later in the comic book world, he was even able to grow into the planet Hulk and blow up planets with one punch. Apocalypse only hopes that this world won't be so absurd, and it won't be like Marvel in the comics, otherwise he really won't be able to die even if he has 10 lives. As for the Abomination Giant, as the battle lasted longer, he gradually began to pant, and his physical strength was not as endless as that of the Hulk. After fighting until now, Apocalypse has verified his strength, and there is no need to continue the battle. Apocalypse stepped forward, kicked the Hulk away, and then ducked behind Abomination. His hands were like hooks, directly inserted into Abomination's spine. Crack! The spine of the dragon was forcibly broken by Apocalypse. He roared with hatred and pain. His body collapsed to the ground and he could no longer get up. Apocalypse said to the Hulk, "Hulk, it's over here. You go, come back to me when you change back to Banner." The Hulk roared a few times, "I am Hulk. Immutable Banner. If you don't change and go back to Banner, what will you do with your girlfriend?" The Hulk looked at the helicopter in the sky, hesitated, roared, took a few steps, and disappeared into the night with a big jump. In the original plot, Abomination was strangled with a chain by the Hulk, and General Ross took him away, and his whereabouts are unknown since then. It was not until many years later, after Thanos wiped out half of all life in the universe, that he appeared in the plot of Shang-Chi, fighting Master Wong. However, by that time, he seemed to have regained his consciousness, and he actually cooperated with Master Wong in fake punches. Apocalypse shouted to the sky, "General Ross, the rest will be left to you." After saying that, he made a long jump and disappeared from the sight of Elizabeth and the general. Apocalypse finds Dr. Stern. It was found that he endured the severe pain and refused to drink the recovery potion. The result was that his head was bulging like an alien. However, Dr. Stern didn't care about this, and started to observe the recovery potion with the help of simple tools. Tianchi took out 5 recovery potions and said, "You saw what happened tonight. You can't go back to the academy. Why don't you follow me and I'll have enough potions until you can research it?" Dr. Stern nodded in agreement. He understood that he was involved in a huge whirlpool, so he might as well pretend to be dead while taking advantage of the chaos. He had seen with his own eyes the miraculous effects of the recovery potion. Compared with it, previous research looked as childish as kindergarten homework. After everything was settled, Tianchi finally had the mood and time to think about how to survive in this world. First of all, we need to understand what kind of world this is. The Marvel Universe includes countless parallel universes and intricate timelines. The most terrifying thing is the comic book universe, which destroys the world, modifies timelines, and breaks the walls of the universe at every turn, without any logic at all. If you are in such a world, no matter how strong you are, you never know where a more perverted strong person will appear from where and kill you with one finger. In the original comics, the Hulk was chained by Thanos and enslaved like a dog for millions of years. In the movie, he was kept as a battle pet by Gao Tianzun on the Sokka planet. If Thor hadn't arrived at Sakaar and taken him away, he would have been enslaved until he was defeated and killed by a stronger man. His power comes from the blood of the Hulk, and he may not be able to resist such a perverted strongman. Fortunately, judging from various signs, he should be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The structure of the movie universe is relatively logical and can be understood by normal people. The Hulk also survived to the end. As long as he was careful, his chances of survival were still very high. But Apocalypse doesn't dare to be careless. The Hulk can survive to the end, which is a bit lucky for the protagonist, but he doesn't dare to count on luck. In the movie universe, Iron Man, the most lucky and core superhero character, died in the end. It can be seen that luck is an elusive thing and cannot guarantee one's own safety. If he meets a cosmic-level powerhouse, he will still trust the fist in his hand. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the biggest known boss on the surface is Thanos, but there are actually quite a few hidden strong men. Gao Tianzun, the ruler of Sakaar mentioned earlier, is probably no weaker than Thanos. There is also Star-Lord's father, the god Ego, whose planet is immortal and lives forever. The whole universe plants its own root system to propagate the whole universe. Dormammu, who was forced back by Doctor Strange's time loop, is the master of the universe of the dark element and cannot be underestimated. There is also a place visited in Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a god's head. Just one head has allowed the Tivan group to develop it for hundreds of years. One can imagine how powerful this god would be. And who had his head chopped off by him? Where did the body parts go? As well as the core treasure in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Infinity Stones. It is briefly mentioned in the movie that these 6 gems are condensed from the 138 singularities left behind by the Big Bang 6 billion years ago. Who condensed the gem? Being able to condense singular points into gems, how terrifyingly powerful is this? Then what happened during these more than 100 billion years? How did these 6 gems scatter in the universe, and why did they gather on a remote planet in the Milky Way, the Earth? There are also observers, the Eternals who will appear in the future, the gods born underground on the Earth, the Supreme Court of Life, and even the legendary OAA, etc. Judging from the plot of the movie, in terms of strength alone, the Avengers are far from being a match for these strong men, but they have won again and again. Is all this a coincidence? The protagonist's luck? Or is there an invisible driving force behind it, controlling all of this? Tianchi carefully sorted out the details that he had not paid much attention to when watching movies before, and then he realized the horror behind it. In comparison, the little power he gained was not worth mentioning at all. My biggest advantage is that I know the direction of the plot well. I can use these prophetic advantages to develop in a low-key manner and maximize my strength. If you have a little bit of strength, you have to go crazy and cool to the sky. You don't know how high the sky is. If you attract a hidden boss, you will die unjustly. He also had a beloved wife who ran away from home, but he couldn't unjustly take advantage of another man. Thinking of this, Tianchi felt that he still needed to do one more thing. After dawn, Tianchi searched for a map online. Find a building called Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division, Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division. This is the legendary Shield. The location of the Shield building is not kept secret and can be easily found whether on a map or from a satellite. When most people hear the name, it refers to strategic defense and logistical support, and they mix it with general military organizations and don't care. In the early days, Shield was indeed very low-key and did not make any big moves. It was not until the Super War came that it took on the responsibility of protecting mankind and surfaced. After dawn, Apocalypse changed his clothes and came to the gate of Shield. Outside Shield is a guard box, and armored vehicles and elite soldiers are constantly coming in and out of the gate. Tianchi walked slowly to the guard box. One of the 2 soldiers stopped him. "Stop. Please show me your pass." Tianchi shrugged. "I don't have a pass, I came to see my wife." "What?" The soldier thought he heard wrongly. "Do you know where this place is? Are you here to find a wife?" Apocalypse pointed at the door. "Isn't that written? Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, SHIELD for short. Go, there is no wife here. You have to look for her elsewhere." The soldier looked impatient. "I brought the marriage certificate with me. I came to your director to ask for a wife." Ha 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 ha. The 2 soldiers laughed. "I heard such a funny thing early in the morning. Our director was actually visited by someone asking for his wife." A soldier said. "Bet $50. The director must have brought back a beautiful woman from the bar last night, maybe she is still in bed now." Another soldier high-fived. "Deal. I'll add $100 and bet it's an Oriental beauty." Tianchi smiled. "For the sake of you being my wife's colleagues, I won't beat you up." Tell Fury that if he doesn't come out, I will lose my temper. Ha 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 ha, are you going to lose your temper? You're laughing so hard at me. Do you know where this place is? An Oriental came to our shield to lose his temper. Ha ha, this should be the funniest joke this year. No, this can only be ranked second. Finding a wife is the funniest thing, ha 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 ha. Apocalypse frowned. After all, this is S.H.I.E.L.D., where Black Widow works. They will also play an important role in defending the Earth in the future. It's really not easy for him to get along with these soldiers, shouting and killing. Tianchi turned to a surveillance camera and said, Fury, I know you are watching me. If you don't come out, I will really lose my temper. Black Widow performed a mission and had a fake marriage with herself. As the director, Fury could not possibly not know that, and Black Widow would definitely record it in the report. If it were just this identity, Director Fury might not be able to remember it. After all, in their eyes, he is a nobody. But the battle last night was already a super battle, beyond the scope of ordinary people. This is not something that General Ross can handle. S.H.I.E.L.D. must have collected intelligence long ago. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to find the Hulk later and recruit him to join the Avengers. This shows that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been tracking these superheroes. In Avengers 1, they were extremely nervous when they invited the transformed Dr. Banner to track down the Cosmic Cube. On the surface, it was Black Widow who came forward alone, but in fact, there was an elite team lurking in the dark. Banner just pretended to yell, which frightened ace agents like Black Widow into disfigurement. He pointed a gun at Dr. Banner, and all the elite teams lurking were exposed. This shows how much pressure the Hulk puts on them. Last night, he defeated the Hulk 1 against 2. Apocalypse believed that from the moment he appeared at the gate, the alarm within S.H.I.E.L.D. was already full and on full alert. Seeing that the building inside was still silent and unresponsive, Tianchi put away his smile and deliberately shouted, Fury, you have to force me, right? Yeah. Instantly, the alarm sounded. Countless guns were pointed at Tianchi, and a voice came from the loudspeaker. Don't fire, don't fire. Unfortunately, the voice from the loudspeaker shouted a little late. Da 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 da. More than a dozen bullets poured on Tianchi. Tianchi was furious, stamped his foot, and with a boom, the ground cracked and the guard box collapsed. Apocalypse ducked to avoid the bullet, and rushed inside. Beyond the guard box, there is a large square inside with countless military equipment. A tank slowly turned its muzzle and fired a shot. Tianchi crossed his hands in front of him. With a boom, a ball of fire exploded, enveloping Apocalypse in it. The gunshots all around fell silent, and it felt like the intruder should have been dealt with. Unexpectedly, in an instant, Apocalypse walked out of the shell fire, so frightened that the surrounding soldiers forgot to fire their guns. What kind of monster is this? Can you even shoot tank shells head-on? Roar! Apocalypse did not give the tank a second chance. He roared and a deep pit exploded under his feet. The man instantly crossed a distance of dozens of meters and crashed into the tank. Boom! Quack! Quack! There was a loud noise, a plume of black smoke emitted from the tank's engine, and then it died. This is not over, just tear the steel plate from the side, and the 50mm steel plate that can withstand armor-piercing bullets is torn open like paper soaked in water, making a tooth-piercing sound. The two pilots inside were stunned. Before they could realize what was going on, they were thrown out by Apocalypse. Then, he grabbed the gun barrel and exerted force on his waist. The tank weighing dozens of tons was raised high and hit the ground with a boom. Boom, 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 boom. The tank was like a heavy hammer, smashing more than a dozen large craters into the ground. Some armored vehicles and tanks were smashed by Tianchi just as they were about to point their guns at Tianchi, and were directly scrapped. Fortunately, he is not the Hulk or the Abomination, and will not lose himself in the infinite power. Otherwise, I don't know how many people in S.H.I.E.L.D. will die today. Although the current S.H.I.E.L.D. has a framework, it doesn't have many capable superheroes. The most powerful Captain Marvel is still maintaining peace in other galaxies in the Milky Way. Mr. Tang, please stop. If you have something to say, you have something to say. A voice came from afar. It turned out to be Director Fury trotting out of the building and shouting to Apocalypse from a distance. Director Fury himself is resolute and cold-blooded. In the original plot, Even though he was attacked and his life or death was uncertain, he did not show any panic. But now facing Apocalypse, his face can't help but sweat slightly, and he doesn't know whether he was frightened or ran away. Apocalypse held up the tank and glanced this way. Fury subconsciously stepped back, fearing that Apocalypse would throw dozens of tons of tanks over. Boom! Apocalypse put down the tank and slowly walked towards Fury. At this time, there were at least hundreds of weapons of all kinds pointing at him around him. As the Apocalypse got closer, Fury's forehead became more sweaty. Walking closer, Tianchi said, "It seems that you don't welcome me very much. Look at this battle, you are trying to keep me out." Director Fury hurriedly said, "Misunderstandings are all misunderstandings. Your arrival is our honor. I apologize to you on behalf of the soldiers." The two soldiers at the post were covered in cold sweat. They thought they were fools, but they turned out to be great gods. What a tragedy. I just laughed at him. I wonder if this strong man will take it to heart. Tianchi said, "Don't talk about these useless things. Do you know why I came here this time?" Director Fury said, "Why don't we go in and talk?" Apocalypse smiled. "Aren't you afraid that after I get in, I won't be able to come to an agreement and dismantle your shield?" Mr. Tang is joking. I believe you are a rational person. Fury secretly thought to himself, it's useless to be afraid. If you really want to break it down, you won't be able to resist it outside. Arrive at the large top floor office dozens of floors high. Apocalypse gets right to the point. "Where's Natasha?" Fury said. "She is not at the headquarters. She rarely comes back even if she is not on a mission. We need her to be on call around the world at any time. Since she's not here, I'll talk to you first. Please say. I don't have anything else to do. I'm here to see my wife. She left me on her wedding day. I haven't seen her for so many days. I miss her very much," Tianchi said leisurely. Compared to Apocalypse's leisurely look, Fury looked a little more cautious. "Mr. Tang, you should know that was a fake wedding and it doesn't count." Director Fury felt a little nervous when he said this, but he had to tell the truth. "I originally thought that the Black Widow was using an unknown person to perform a fake marriage, but who thought she was a great god. Now that a strong man of this level is coming to investigate, Fury feels uneasy." Oh, I even have a marriage certificate with the government's official seal on it, why isn't it counted?" Fury said. "Mr. Tang, at our level, everyone knows that the local laws of the City of God do not restrict us. We did not know Mr. Tang's strength before, and it was our fault to send agents to get close to you. I apologize to you. Please tell me what Mr. Tang wants to say." Ha 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 ha, so refreshing. Director Fury, let me make it clear that I am determined to marry Natasha. Fury's expression changed. "However, I don't intend to marry someone by force. Although the marriage between Natasha and me is required by your mission, it does not mean that we have no feelings. I will rely on my own efforts to make her return to her heart." Fury was a little surprised. "If that's the case, I have nothing to say. Our shield does not prohibit our agents from getting married. Mr. Tang can just pursue it. But I have a request that requires the director's cooperation. Otherwise, I will lose my temper today and destroy shield." Fury looked solemn and said, "Please tell me. From now on, Natasha is not allowed to sell her beauty for any reason. Unless our marriage is dissolved, I will only ask shield." Fury breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It's reasonable, I promise you. I will give Natasha an order. From now on, she will not be allowed to use her body to seduce the enemy." Tianchi smiled. "That's good. The reason why Apocalypse is eager to come to S.H.I.E.L.D. is because of this. You know, European and American women are open-minded and do not value chastity very much. As an agent, Black Widow takes advantage of women to the extreme. In the original plot of Avengers 1, she pretended to be caught by a group of underground arms dealers. Several grown men tied her to a chair and interrogated her. She pretended to be pitiful and in turn obtained information. But in the real world, how could a few arms dealers capture a peerless beauty and just tie her to a chair? You will definitely do whatever you want. With Black Widow's character, it's really possible for them to take advantage of her for information. After all, when a man is happiest, he is also at his weakest guard. Including this time, in order to assassinate a drug dealer boss, she did not hesitate to fake a marriage with herself and sleep in the same bed for half a month. Apocalypse couldn't control it in the past, but now that he has a marriage certificate and a systematic sharing of luck, it is absolutely impossible for Black Widow to use her body to perform tasks. Now that Mr. Tang's problem has been solved, please answer a few questions for me. You said. Fury straightened his expression. I want to know what the Eastern powers want to do by sending a strong man like you to lurk in the West. Aren't they afraid of provoking a super war between the two countries? Tianqi was stunned, but his face remained calm. You are overthinking, I am just an ordinary person. If I hadn't met Natasha, I might have opened a small shop and retired in the city of God. Hearing such words, Director Fury was actually a little angry. Mr. Tang, a wise man does not speak secretly. I know that you, the big country in the East, look down on us in the West and feel that we do not have the ability to deal with threats from the heavens. But we have an agreement, so there is no need. You step in. Moreover, we are also building a team that is fully capable of protecting the Western Hemisphere. These few sentences contained a lot of information. Tianqi's expression did not change, but his thoughts changed rapidly. Listening to Fury's words, it seems that the great Eastern countries also have superpowers, and the two sides have an agreement not to invade each other. No, not just non-aggression, but each protecting half of the Earth. Tianqi quickly recalled the plot he had seen in his previous life. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Avengers' footprints are basically in the West, and they never go to the realms of fighting nations or Eastern powers. At most, they can go to Shangjiang, but that was once a colony of the heroic empire. However, the realm of the fighting nations and the great Eastern countries was peaceful, and I had never heard of any super-villains. It would be impossible to imagine that there are no superheroes in these ancient and vast countries like the East and the fighting nation. In Nordic mythology, there are Asgard and Thor. The great Eastern countries are even older, and there may not be hidden strong men in the myths. In fact, some clues were vaguely revealed in the subsequent plot. For example, in the dojo of the Supreme Master Ancient One, there is an Asian Master Wang and a Taoist priest who has lost his arm practicing there. Moreover, the ancient Kama Taj is located in the Himalayas, which is the border of the great Eastern country. Her various superpowers are closer to Eastern magic than Western magic. There is also Shang-Chi, in the generation after Thanos. Shang-Chi's mother comes from the mysterious Da Luo Tian, which is full of Orientals and countless Oriental beasts, including the totem of Orientals, the dragon. It can be seen that the East is not without superheroes and gods similar to Thor. On the contrary, there may be more and stronger ones suppressing the Eastern Hemisphere. For example, Da Luotian suppressed a dragon of darkness for thousands of years, unable to move. If Shang-Chi's father Wenwu hadn't used the ancient artifact, the 10 rings, to force open the sealed door, the dark dragon would have continued to be suppressed. Therefore, Dongfang is too quiet, not because no one takes notice of it, but on the contrary, it may be because it is too strong, and the dark villains in the world cannot take a step beyond the Thunder Pool. Generally speaking, if a place is frequently invaded, then this place must be the weakest in defense. The Western world is the weak link of the Earth. He is an Easterner, and his strength is far beyond his imagination. No wonder Fury's first reaction was to suspect that he was sent by a big Eastern country. After thinking about it, Tianqi decided not to pretend to be mysterious and said calmly, I can assure you that I am not affiliated with any force and am a free person. Tianqi said this with careful consideration in his heart. First, Fury will definitely communicate with the Eastern powers, pretending to be a superpower from the East, which may cause unnecessary trouble. If neither East nor West trusts itself, then it may lead to the pursuit of stronger ones. Secondly, if you want to follow the plot and grow in strength, S.H.I.E.L.D's trust is essential. If S.H.I.E.L.D. sees itself as a threat, it's equivalent to turning against the entire Avengers. The next plot may completely change, and I will lose the advantage of being a prophet. Fury stared into Apocalypse's eyes and asked, seriously? Really? Director Fury let out a long breath, and his expression suddenly relaxed. A strong person at Tianqi's level generally disdains lying. According to the intelligence, Fury knew that Apocalypse was brought to the city of God by his elders when he was very young, perhaps after a strong man leaked from the East. Since he is a free person, can he be recruited? Moreover, he seemed to have a crush on Natasha. If they could become a real couple, wouldn't he be the son-in-law of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Thinking of this, Fury was overjoyed and said, Mr. Tang, are you interested in joining S.H.I.E.L.D.? We are preparing to form a team here. Tianqi said. Is it the Avengers? Fury's expression changed. How do you know? This name only exists in files. He has never told anyone else. How could the Oriental in front of him know? Tianqi smiled and said, I also know that this name comes from Carol Danvers' fighter plane. It's a pity that she is not here, otherwise I would like to ask her for some combat skills. Carol Danvers is Captain Marvel, the most powerful woman in the Avengers. If Thanos didn't have the Infinity Stones, he might not be able to defeat her. In Avengers 4, she had a brief confrontation with Thanos. Thanos tried to snatch the Infinity Gauntlet back from her hand, but was unable to do so, and then hit Captain Marvel on the forehead with his head. Thanos, who was as tall as a tower, couldn't hit Captain Marvel. Instead, Thanos himself was knocked dizzy. In the end, Thanos removed the Power Stone from the Infinity Gauntlet, and with the help of the power of the stone, he punched Captain Marvel away. However, her plot timeline took place in the 90s, more than 20 years ago. Now she doesn't know which planet in the galaxy she will be a superhero on. For Captain Marvel, who can easily cross the stars and can physically crash through an interstellar battleship, Apocalypse looks at the power he has obtained. It is really not worth mentioning, so he has to throw it away when comparing. Tianqi said, You don't need to worry about how I know. Everyone has their own secrets. You just need to know that I have no ill intentions towards you. Moreover, I am busy with my own affairs and cannot join your alliance. Fury believed that there was no malice. During last night's battle, not even the military or the Hulk took the initiative to save civilians. Only Apocalypse took the trouble to send people out of the danger zone one by one. How could a person with such a kind heart be so bad? Of course, Tianqi's kindness is part of it, but no one knows that he saves people and the system rewards recovery potions. Fury said, Since Mr. Tang is unwilling to join, why don't we make a compromise and become a consultant for us? We are usually not restricted. Only when we encounter troublesome things, like last night, do we ask Mr. Tang to take action. Seeing Tianqi pondering, Fury added, This is a win-win cooperation. Mr. Tang can ask us to handle some of the troublesome little things he usually does without wasting time. And, it is also convenient to contact Natasha. Can I have more contact with Black Widow? Tianqi was moved by this. Without the help of S.H.I.E.L.D., I wouldn't be able to find Black Widow on my own. So he said, This is feasible. However, I have a few requirements. Please say, first of all, give me $5 million United States dollars as a deposit. Fury jumped up. $5 million. Do you think our S.H.I.E.L.D. is a bank? No, absolutely not, at most 500 million. How is 500 million enough? I promised to give Natasha a home, but I can't even buy a better house with this money. That's less than 5 million. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s allocation is limited. There are still so many people to pay and a lot of equipment needs to be purchased. If you don't have funds, just apply to your superiors. Can't you hire a super strong person to increase the funds? That's not even 5 million. Just now you smashed a lot of our tanks and armored vehicles, all of which cost money. When it came to money, Fury couldn't maintain his cold look and started bargaining with Apocalypse angrily. I really don't know how expensive firewood, rice, oil and salt are. In the original plot, Iron Man said that S.H.I.E.L.D. could not afford to hire him, not only because of Iron Man's high worth, but also because S.H.I.E.L.D. had not highlighted its importance at this time and did not have much surplus in funding. After a verbal exchange, Fury promised to give Apocalypse $3,000 million US. If there is a mission in the future, the specific payment will be based on the difficulty of the mission. The two eventually reached an agreement. Apocalypse left S.H.I.E.L.D. with satisfaction. Director Fury showed a scheming smile. Tens of millions of dollars were used to recruit a super strong man, who could also become the son-in-law of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future. This deal was a good deal no matter how you thought about it. Over the years, the equipment the Hulk has smashed alone has cost far more than $3,000 million. As for Apocalypse, it's not that we really need 5 million. The asking price is sky high, so we can pay back the money when we get it done. 3,000 million is enough for the time being. If there is not enough money in the future, we will find another way. I have just recruited Dr. Stern and need to build an underground laboratory. This alone will cost a lot of money. What's more, I still need to buy a house. Orientals, how can you feel like home without a house? As soon as Apocalypse left, Fury had a holographic video call with Black Widow. Chapter 11. Fury. Natasha, in the name of the director, I prohibit you from using a skill from now on. Black Widow asked in confusion. What skill? Seduction. Black Widow was confused. Why did the director suddenly give such a strange order? Beauty is one of your greatest weapons, and it can be used in any way. If it cannot be used, its strength will be reduced by at least half. Fury sighed. Your husband is knocking on the door. If you don't agree, he will dismantle S.H.I.E.L.D. Wah, what kind of husband? Director, you know, I have more than a dozen fake marriage husbands. There is some expectation in my heart, could it be him? Black Widow is indeed a little attracted to Apocalypse, otherwise she wouldn't have stayed one night after poisoning her. Staying for 1 minute longer is more dangerous. Staying like this for an entire night is not the behavior a king's agent should do. When I left on the second day, I even tore up the marriage certificate and couldn't help but write a few words. These were all signs of confusion. Thinking about it, I thought it was impossible. He was just an ordinary person working in a flower shop. How could he have the ability to infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D. and force the director to make such a promise? Fury said, I will pass you some information, and you will understand after reading it. As he spoke, he sent the video of last night's battle, the S.H.I.E.L.D. battle just now, and the urgently investigated information to Black Widow through the encrypted line. The information about Apocalypse is very simple. When he was young, he followed his elders to the kingdom of God. After his parents died, he opened a flower shop in the city of God to make a living. The only abnormality is that the flower shop in the chaotic city of God has been calm for so many years, and the gangsters who wanted to cause trouble for him have mysteriously disappeared. Before this, S.H.I.E.L.D. speculated that it was taken care of by the drug lord Fei Ying, but after seeing the strength of Apocalypse, they thought wrongly. Because of the source of Apocalypse's strength, Dr. Stern, the only one who knew about it, had been recruited by Apocalypse. The other information is nothing short of ordinary. Black Widow glanced at everything until she saw the battle last night. Black Widow couldn't believe her eyes. How powerful was her fake husband? More importantly, he approached S.H.I.E.L.D. just a few days after he left, indicating that he already knew his identity. Thinking of this, Black Widow was a little angry. This liar knew his identity and didn't reveal it. He must be watching his own joke. But when I think about those vows at the wedding, since the other party knows my identity, then those vows are also sincere. Does he really want to be his own husband? The Black Widow was a little confused. It was one thing to fake a marriage for a spy mission, but when she really wanted to give herself to one person for the rest of her life, the Black Widow was like an ordinary woman. She was a little flustered and didn't know how to face it. If Apocalypse were an ordinary person, Black Widow would refuse without hesitation, no matter how tempted she is. In order to ensure safety, she has no fixed place and dare not have a real home. Ordinary people will never end up well if they stay with her. But after watching the video sent by Director Fury and knowing that her cheap husband was actually an extremely strong man, Black Widow couldn't help but feel moved. However, the way the two opened up was wrong. She first deceived him, pretended to fall in love at first sight, then faked a marriage, and then drugged his elder in front of him and killed Fei Ying. With all the entanglements, Black Widow doesn't know how to start this relationship. Black Widow was silent for a long time and said, Director, I don't know how to handle it. Fury laughed loudly. Natasha, you are afraid of fate. You have called S.H.I.E.L.D. your home for so many years, but this is not a real home. But, what should I do? I can't teach you. This is not a task. This is your life. Everything is decided by you. Seeing that Black Widow was silent, Fury added, just think about it slowly, I won't send you any tasks in the next few days. Remember, you must never use beauty again before your relationship with him is resolved. Now S.H.I.E.L.D. can't resist a monster more powerful than the Hulk. Apocalypse, with $3,000 million, first gave half of it to Dr. Stern to build a laboratory, and then spent $800 million to buy a villa in the suburbs, along with the surrounding land. This place is not far from S.H.I.E.L.D., only a few dozen kilometers away. With Apocalypse's current strength, he can reach it in a big jump. This will also be his home in this world. After everything was arranged, Apocalypse called Black Widow. After calling several times, Black Widow hung up. Apocalypse shrugged, knowing that Black Widow didn't know how to face herself yet, and could only slowly find opportunities in the future. During this period, Apocalypse gradually became familiar with his own strength and learned some fighting skills. After all, he was not the Hulk and could not defeat all enemies by randomly smashing them. Tianqi took a look at the system data. Restoration Potion. 173 bottles. Black Widow shares luck. 65%. Hulk shares luck. 30%. Black Widow's original shared luck was only 60%. During this time, her trust in herself has increased a little. It shows that going to S.H.I.E.L.D. is still effective. As for the Hulk's 30%, it means having a favorable impression. It's not surprising that he has the blood of the Hulk in his body and he saved the Hulk's girlfriend Elizabeth. But what is the role of luck? Apocalypse doesn't know yet. But one thing is certain, you will never die if you are lucky. In the original plot, Black Widow, Vision, and even the absolute protagonist Iron Man died, and they were still unable to be resurrected with the Infinity Stones. There may be some protagonist aura, but it is not a life-saving talisman. Speaking of Iron Man, according to Apocalypse's memory, the plot time of Hulk 2 inches should be around the same period as Iron Man 1. At this time, Tony Stark was not yet Iron Man, and he was often in the gossip news because he dated a certain cover girl. Apocalypse has been following the news about Iron Man. Suddenly one day, the news reported, Tony Stark, the heir to Stark Industries, genius scientist, and billionaire, disappeared while transporting weapons in the Middle East and his whereabouts are currently unknown. Stark Industries has offered a $5,000 million reward for any information on Tony's whereabouts. The plot of Iron Man 1 inch has begun. In the original plot, Tony Stark was kidnapped by a group of violent men called the Ten Rings Gang and forced to make missiles. At this time, he should be in a cave in the desert of the Middle East. Moreover, his heart was injured, there were bomb fragments inside, and he had to rely on an external battery to survive. It is not difficult to rescue Tony. Although it is inconvenient to find him, as long as he notifies S.H.I.E.L.D. and determines the approximate location, it is not difficult to find and rescue him. The problem is that this experience was a turning point in Tony's life and a key event in his transformation from a playboy to Iron Man. If I interfere too early, I'm afraid there will be no Iron Man in this world. Iron Man is the core figure in a series of events in the future. Without him, everything will change in the future, and his profit will be ineffective. If you don't care about it and don't take advantage of the time, you won't be able to share the fate of Iron Man. Naturally, the more luck, the better. This creates a bit of a dilemma. Tianqi thought for a while and contacted Dr. Stern. Stern, if I connect to a surveillance system, can you hack it? Boss, my brainpower has been greatly improved now. I can easily learn such hacking methods. It's a piece of cake. That's good, wait for my order. Dr. Stern, no problem. But, boss, do you still have the recovery potion? I have used it up. So soon, less than a month, Tianqi asked casually. But to Stern's ears, it sounded a bit blaming. When he thought about it, recovery potion, a magical potion, must be worth a lot of money. 6 bottles were equivalent to 6 lives. Just selling it to rich people would be worth hundreds of millions. It's really hard to explain that I used it up in a month. Stern quickly said, Boss, although I haven't analyzed the ingredients of the potion yet, I have already achieved some results. Tell me the story. Although the medicine is magical and can return people to normal status instantly, it also has some flaws. If the injury has already healed, or the organ has been missing for too long and has healed, it cannot be repaired. Tianqi felt bad in his heart and asked, if a person is blind for 20 years, or a woman has her uterus removed for more than 10 years, will it be impossible to recover? That's right, let alone more than 10 years. As long as the injury heals, it cannot be repaired. What if we destroy the scar again? For example, we poke the blind eye again. No way. This potion seems to only be able to restore the wound to its original state before it healed. If the scar is destroyed and then repaired, it will only be repaired into a scar. Apocalypse's heart sank. Originally, he wanted to use the recovery potion and give it to Director Fury at an appropriate time as a favor. Fury is blinded in one eye. He was blinded by the element-eating beast in the plot of Captain Marvel in the 90s. Still, it's a small thing. The key is the Black Widow. Her uterus was brutally removed by the Red House and she was infertile throughout her life. This was her biggest regret. If he could repair himself, it would make it easier for her to accept him. If the recovery potion doesn't work, you need to find another way. Tianqi said in a deep voice, I'll send you a few more bottles. The next day, Albuquerque, desert. Based on the location of Tony's accident and the impressions in his memory, Apocalypse quickly located a canyon where a large number of militants were active. Night falls. Using the darkness as cover, Apocalypse quietly approached the canyon. There were hundreds of armed men in the canyon, the ground was piled with weapons, and there was a cave inside. With Apocalypse's strength, hunting down this group of militants is easy. But to maintain the original plot and maintain my own vision of the future, there are many things that cannot be done. Apocalypse climbed down the cliff, his fingers like hooks inserted into the rock, crawling against the rock like a gecko. After finding the surveillance line, Tianqi cut the line and quickly connected a device in less than a second. After that, all surveillance images would pass through this device. The leader inside saw the surveillance screen flash for a moment and then return to normal, so he didn't have too much suspicion. In this barren mountain and wilderness, it is good to have a set of surveillance systems. It is not surprising that there will be some minor problems occasionally. In movies, the infinite loop of a scene is used a lot. It is the simplest, but also the most dangerous. As long as you are careful, you can easily find it. This device can slow down the video signal for 1 second. During this second, the micro CPU in the device can control the monitoring screen at will. Apocalypse asked Dr. Stern to set up the program early. As long as no one notices him and Apocalypse walks past the surveillance camera, there won't be any trace of him on the monitor. Cool night. The violent men gathered outside the cave and lit a bonfire. Apocalypse's 5 fingers were like hooks, inserted into the rock, along the cliff, and climbed in silently from the top of the cave. The inside was separated by iron plates and a temporary cell was built. Tianqi took out a lock-picking artifact, and this backward lock was easily opened. Squeak. Opening the iron door, I saw 2 people inside. One is naturally Tony Stark. At this time, he looks depressed and unshaven. A long wire is pulled out from his chest and connected to a battery on the table. The other is a typical Middle Eastern man. Although he is poorly dressed, he is gentle and elegant. He should be Ethan. In the process of Tony Stark's transformation into Iron Man, the person who had the greatest influence was this Ethan. He used his kindness and life to awaken the responsibility in Iron Man's heart, thus shouldering the burden of defending the world. This was unimaginable to Tony, who had only wanted to sleep with more cover girls before. The two were shocked, thinking that it was someone from the 10 Rings gang who came in, but they didn't expect that it was an Oriental. For a moment, 3 pairs of eyes looked at me, and I looked at you, but no one spoke. Tianqi broke the embarrassment. Ahem, are you Tony Stark? My name is Tang Tianqi. Tony asked carefully. Are you here to save me? Be careful and monitor. Seeing Apocalypse's face, Tony and Ethan first ruled out being members of the 10 Rings gang. Because the violent elements in the Middle East are united by faith and are extremely xenophobic, it is impossible for an Oriental to appear. Tianqi said. Don't worry about the surveillance, it has been solved. However, I am not here to save you, I am delivering food. What? Tony and Ethan couldn't believe what they heard. Brother, are you kidding? Delivering takeaways to the Shiji gang's lair. Tony said. Did Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes invite you here? He is really good at joking. I don't know Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes. I have takeout here. Do you want it? Tianqi opened his close-fitting backpack seriously and took out a few cartons. Suddenly, the whole cell was filled with aroma. Ethan said cautiously. We have no money and can't afford takeout. Tianqi smiled and said. It's okay, you can get it on credit first. But Tony is not as cautious as Ethan. Now that he has reached this point, it is impossible for someone to poison him, right? Tony took a paper bag. Cheeseburger. How do you know I like this? Cheeseburgers have appeared many times in movie plots. In the plot of the movie, Iron Man 1, after Iron Man was rescued, he immediately found a cheeseburger to eat. Later, he and Pepper had a daughter, Morgan, and he mentioned cheeseburgers to her daughter many times. This shows how much Iron Man likes it. Tianchi is an Oriental and doesn't really appreciate cheese, but considering that his country has stinky tofu, it's not surprising that foreigners like the same kind of food. When I came here, I bought a few in a city outside the desert. I have never eaten such a delicious burger. Which store is this from? After I go out, I must buy the store and eat it every day. Apocalypse smiled and said nothing. This was just an ordinary cheeseburger. Tony was trapped here for half a month, eating the same mushy food every day, so naturally he found it delicious. This is similar to what Zhu Yuanzhang ate in ancient times, pearl jade white jade soup. Tianchi picked up another paper bag and handed it to Ethan. You're welcome, if you don't eat it, Tony will eat your share. After thinking about it, Ethan became more polite. When he opened it, he saw that it was a large Orleans roast chicken. It was golden in color and the aroma of the chicken immediately filled the entire cell. Tony suddenly felt that the burger in his hand was no longer tasty. Why do you have roast chicken? Leave a chicken leg for me. Halfway through the meal, Tony sighed and said, if you have a cup of Coke at this time, it will be perfect. When he thought about it, it was already extremely difficult for the mysterious Oriental man in front of him to bring in 2 bags of food. Asking for Coke again was really a bit fanciful. Unexpectedly, Tianchi took out 2 bottles of Coke from his bag and handed them over. The ice cubes haven't melted yet, drink it. Tony opened his eyes wide. I kind of believe you are a food delivery guy now. The 2 devoured their food and soon ate every bit of it. They even chewed the bones of the roasted chicken to taste the flavor inside. After eating, Tony leaned comfortably on the stool and said, it's so delicious. I would rather pay 100 million yuan for a meal. However, after I go out and eat every day, I won't feel this way anymore. Let's go. Tony took it for granted that Apocalypse was here to rescue him. What he said before was just a joke. The meal was for them to replenish their strength. The next escape would be very difficult. In his genius mind, this reasoning was very reasonable and logical. Too bad he was wrong. Tianchi recycled the food carton and said, 1 million yuan for a meal, you said it. I will send it again in the future. With that said, he tied his backpack close to his body, walked out, locked the door again, and disappeared into the darkness like a gecko. Holy shit, he locked the door. What's going on? Tony was dumbfounded, and even though he had received a good education since childhood, he couldn't help but curse. Take me out. If you are not satisfied with 100 million, I will give you 100 million. 1 billion, 0.2 billion. At this time, Apocalypse was already far away, and Tony's cry attracted 2 soldiers. Soldier A, why are you yelling in the middle of the night? Shut up. Soldier B, I seem to smell roasted chicken. Soldier A, what's that nose of yours? Where's the roast chicken? Hey, it seems to smell like hamburger. The 2 soldiers searched the cell and found nothing out of the ordinary, so they left with doubts on their faces. Tony and Ethan were left with the same question mark. Ethan, Tony, are you sure this isn't a joke made by your friends in the military? Tony shook his head firmly. He won't be my friend. Rhodes is a soldier, rigid and strict. In matters of life and death, it is impossible to make such a joke. You know, if the soldiers noticed something strange just now, or bumped into Apocalypse, they would immediately attract countless bullets. Even the unruly Tony would not dare to make such a dangerous joke. But, no joke, Tony couldn't even figure out what Tianchi wanted to do. He felt that his genius IQ was not enough. If the person who delivered the food was asking for 100 million yuan in food delivery fees, he wouldn't believe it to death. As long as he was rescued, he would be given as much as he wanted. There was no way the other party wouldn't know. 2 days later, Apocalypse lurked in again. Tony was not in a hurry to eat this time. He looked directly into Apocalypse's eyes and asked, what is your purpose? What do you want? Tianchi secretly thought in his heart that he wanted you to become Iron Man and wanted your luck, but unfortunately he couldn't say it clearly, so he could only say, you will know when you get out. Tony said angrily, get out? How can you get out if you don't save me? Have you not thought of a way yet? Apocalypse wonders, does Tony not have any plans to make armor at this time? Tony, what can I do? There's still a big battery attached to my heart. Even if they let me run, I won't be able to run very far. Tianchi said, if you can't run, don't you know how to fly? As he said that, he looked at the materials for making missiles. These materials were used by the leader of the Ten Commandments gang to force him to build the Goliath missile. The Goliath missile is an extremely terrifying missile from Stark Company. Before the accident, Tony demonstrated to the military that a Goliath missile could instantly split into dozens of small warheads in the air, covering the entire mountain range. In an instant, the mountains were blown into dust, making it a powerful weapon for mass killing. With such a sharp weapon, an ordinary army would just deliver food when gathering, and it would be wiped out with just one weapon. Tony's eyes lit up after hearing this. With his IQ, he instantly understood the logic. Can't missiles fly? Ding. Get Iron Man's initial favor and share 10% of your luck. Tianchi didn't expect that his casual question would inspire Tony. Although 10% luck is not much, at least Tony already has a good impression of himself. After Tony and Ethan finished eating their hamburgers, cola and grilled chicken, they burped and said, "Next time I want to drink champagne and Australian lobster, and you can pay whatever you want for takeout, Let's see, it may not happen." Apocalypse was non-committal. He bought these foods from a city more than 100 kilometers away. It took several big jumps to go back and forth, jumping dozens of kilometers at a time. He also had to wait for the opportunity to avoid the soldiers and sneak in. It was quite time-consuming. He would not satisfy Tony's thirst for words and go to further cities to find lobsters. If there were any, he would take them by the way. After Tianchi left, the soldiers came to deliver meals the next morning. Looking at the mushy food, Tony and Ethan didn't even look at it. The two soldiers smelled the aroma again and came in to check with some suspicion. Soldier A: "It must be right, it must be the aroma of roasted chicken." Soldier B: "I smell it too. Tell me, where did you hide the food?" the soldier asked Ethan. Ethan looked panicked, he didn't know how to answer. Tony was afraid that Ethan would spill the beans, so he came over and said, "We are locked up here with a big battery hanging on our chest. Where do we get the grilled chicken burgers? If someone eats it, then, who do you think it is?" As he spoke, he winked in the direction of the residence of the leader of the Ten Rings gang. The cave has several branches, and the leader of the Ten Commandments gang lives on the other side of the cave. Although the environment is not very good, it is at least much more comfortable than being outside in the wind and rain. The soldier understood it immediately. Naturally, it is impossible for these two prisoners to eat any roast chicken, so the only one who lives in the cave is the eldest brother's room. The cave is small and the airflow is interoperable, so it is not surprising that the aroma can drift over. If the boss ate it, they would never dare to question why the boss ate it alone. The two soldiers looked at each other and fell silent. Tony's hint not only resolved his own crisis, but also put the blame on the leader of the Ten Rings gang. In this case, the soldiers would definitely not dare to report it and pretend not to know. In just a few sentences, Tony's genius and IQ are fully demonstrated. Moreover, a shadow was planted in the hearts of the soldiers. How could the boss who lived alone gain the support of the soldiers? Their faith is unshakable, but that doesn't mean the boss is unshakable. Every few days, Tianchi would send food over and check on Tony's progress. In just over a month, the armor has basically taken shape, but because of monitoring, it was not dared to be assembled together. After more than a month, Tony and Ethan couldn't eat and drink well, but they couldn't go out to exercise, so they suddenly gained weight. The soldiers became more and more suspicious, and even the boss of the Ten Rings gang came over. The boss asked angrily, "You haven't eaten all day, how come you're still fat?" Tony said, "This is not fat, this is edema. I use this broken battery in my chest to maintain my life. My body is infected. I'm afraid I won't live long." The boss snorted angrily, "You are bloated, what about Ethan?" Tony's face was not red, and his heart was not beating, and he said, "He was infected. We were in the same room all day long and breathed the same air, so he was also infected." Ethan almost laughed. This was because he was bullying the uneducated leader of the Ten Commandments gang. He suppressed his laughter, his face was deformed, and he hurriedly turned it into a cough to vent it. When the boss saw it, he thought Ethan was having a seizure and was afraid of infection, so he left after saying a few words. It seems that he still suffered the loss of being uneducated, and he quickly said, "Hurry up and make the missile." Once it is done, I will take you to the hospital to save your lives. However, both Tony and Ethan knew that if they really built the missile, they would die when it was completed. The days passed day by day, and the days were like years. I originally thought about making a few more parts to complete, but I didn't expect to be dense and sparse. Ethan bravely hid a piece of chicken leg and wanted to eat it slowly. After all, Tianchi only came every few days, so he was a little greedy in the middle. Unexpectedly, he was found out by the Ten Commandments gang during the inspection. The boss was extremely angry and took Ethan out for torture. Before Ethan was dragged out of the cell, he quickly said to Tony, "Hurry up, I don't know how long I can hold on." "Hey, where did the chicken legs come from? Tell me." "Ah, bah, don't tell me, ah, bah, ah." Every time there was a sound of whipping, Ethan screamed, but he was determined not to speak. Tony understood that this was Ethan's hint to activate the armor and there was no time. No matter whether he can survive the torture or not, when the leader of the Ten Rings gang comes to his senses, he will definitely come in and take away the parts inside, and then he will be defeated. Tony was very anxious. It was daytime now, and the mysterious Oriental man only came at night, and at irregular intervals. Even tonight, he would not be able to come in time. Thinking of this, Tony immediately connected the armor's control unit to the old laptop and turned it on. Booting. The progress bar on the command line was so slow that it seemed as if time had stopped. Ethan's screams and the boss's questioning kept coming from outside. Beep. Startup completed. Tony put on the armor, unplugged the wires on his chest, and connected it to a round, glowing energy body. This was the first-generation arc reactor. At this time, the appearance of the armor was extremely crude, with traces of welding all over the body. The overall appearance was an ugly gray-black color, and the joints were still made of low-quality rubber. Creak, creak, creak. The armor was not lubricated, and there was a tooth-gripping sound of metal friction coming from the gears and joints. Tony stepped forward wearing armor and kicked the cell door made of steel plates away with a bang. What? A soldier outside was hit. His muscles and bones were broken on the spot and he vomited blood. He was afraid he would not survive. Shoot, shoot. The leader of the Ten Rings gang was so angry and anxious that he couldn't care about Ethan, so he just raised his gun and shot him. However, the armor is made of missile casings, which cannot be penetrated by ordinary bullets. The only weak point is the joints, which are made of rubber and cloth. But in a hurry, how could the violent elements think of it? Boom, boom, boom. Taking a few steps forward, Tony swung his iron fist at the soldier. Bang, ah. Under the iron fist, soldiers are like meat buns, and one punch can crush one. Da 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 da. Finally, a soldier reacted and used his AK to aim at the joints of the armor and shoot. Tony bent down and protected his face and joints. Ah! Ethan suddenly screamed. Several stray bullets rebounded and hit him on the chest, causing blood to spit out from his mouth. Ethan. Tony strode forward and protected Ethan. With a press of his fingers, 2 tongues of fire spurted out from both sides of his arms. This was his only weapon. The flames sprayed out more than 10 meters away, burning several soldiers into burning men as they ran out of the cave screaming. Tony hugged Ethan sadly and said, "Hold on and wait until that Easterner comes and go out with me." Ethan's face was peaceful. "Don't worry, me, my family, are all dead, I can finally go see them." Tony cried. "You saved my life, and I haven't repaid you yet." Previously, there was shrapnel in the heart. Ethan helped Tony perform a simple operation and made a simple battery to hang his life. He helped a lot during the process of making the armor. Without him, Tony would never have been able to make the armor so quickly. These days, Ethan's optimistic attitude has also deeply infected Tony. In the original plot, it can be said that Ethan made Tony successful, transforming him from an ordinary person into a superhero. At this time, the voice of the leader of the Ten Commandments gang came from outside. "Use RPG, quick, RPG." Ethan smiled and said, "Let's go. If you want to repay me, then cherish it and don't waste your life." Boom, an RPG shot in. Fortunately, the hole was not straight, and the RPG exploded at the corner. Large pieces of gravel fell one after another. When Tony saw this, he knew that if he didn't leave, both of them would die here, so he reluctantly put Ethan down and ran outside. As soon as he ran to the entrance of the cave, he saw a dozen RPGs aimed at him. Tony's soul exploded, and so many RPGs exploded on him. Even if the blast didn't penetrate him, the shock wave alone would kill him. At this moment, a sudden, whoosh, 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 sound broke through the air. A few pebbles hit the RPG soldier's head like bullets, and suddenly the whole head exploded, white and red splattering on the rock wall. It turns out that Apocalypse has arrived. He saw something abnormal here from a distance, including gunshots and explosions. He guessed that the plot of Iron Man's escape was triggered, so he quickly jumped over, just in time to see a dozen RPGs aimed at Tony. The body of the fallen soldier tilted, his finger instinctively pulled the trigger, and several RPG rounds were fired into the munitions pile outside the cave entrance. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions immediately occurred, and the flames shot straight into the sky. "Come on, why are you standing there?" Tony shouted. "Ethan is still inside. If you save him, no matter what your purpose is, I will promise you. You go first. Your armor is too rudimentary to help. I'll do my best." Tony looked at the situation and knew that staying here would be useless, so he had to activate the armor's jet device, and two plumes of black smoke came out from under his feet, flying into the sky in the light of the explosion. In the original plot, Ethan died to save Tony. It seems that his arrival did not change the plot. The stones that fell from the entrance of Tianqiting rushed into the cave. At this time, Ethan was lying on the ground with only one breath left. Tianqi quickly took out a bottle of recovery potion from the system storage column and poured it into Ethan's mouth. The palm of his hand slapped his back, and a few bullets were knocked out with a force of skill. A green light surged up, and Ethan was resurrected with full health. Ethan patted his body in disbelief, and the bullet hole just disappeared. Tianqi said, "Go out and take a look. Follow me and don't run too far. The crisis has not been resolved yet. The cave is about to collapse. If we don't escape quickly, Ethan will be buried alive in it as soon as he is resurrected." Ethan didn't care to say thank you, covered his head with his hands, and followed behind. Tianqi walked in front. Whether it was a huge boulder falling from his head or a stone blocking the ground, he punched them all away, turning the stones into pieces. Suddenly there was a loud noise, and half of the cliff collapsed, completely burying the entire cave entrance. Tony looked anxious in the air. "I couldn't help but regret asking Apocalypse to save people. Ethan had been shot by a stray bullet and might have died long ago, but for his own selfish reasons, he asked the delivery man to save people, but he didn't expect that he would be buried alive inside. But now he couldn't protect himself, let alone provide help. He could only watch in despair as the cave entrance disappeared into the rocks. Suddenly, a roar came from the depths of the cave. It was as if an ancient behemoth was resurrecting. With a sound of boom, the buried cave was exploded, and a pile of boulders weighing several thousand kilograms could not withstand the huge force and flew dozens of meters away. The boulder hit the Ten Commandments gang members outside, causing bursts of screams. Apocalypse used 3 times the power of the Hulk to blast through the rock formation and walked out. At this time, arms exploded outside, the canyon was ablaze, and many people were killed by boulders. The Ten Commandments gang was in chaos, and no one attacked them at all. With Ethan clamped around his waist, Apocalypse made a big jump in Tony's direction and left the canyon. However, he found new trouble. In the original plot, Tony could only fly dozens of meters high, and finally ran out of power and fell to the desert. Fortunately, the height was not high and Iron Man did not fall to his death. However, Tony is still flying upward now. The armor was hastily made and had no flight balance system at all. In the original plot, Iron Man returned to his laboratory, worked on it for a long time, and hit many walls before he succeeded. It is impossible to do it under such simple conditions now. 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters, Tony flew higher and higher. Suddenly, the black smoke under his feet went out and his power ran out. "Oh," Tony muttered something bad in his armor. Ethan shouted, "Oh no, if you fall from this height, you will definitely die." "Ah," Tony yelled regardless of his image. If he fell from this height, his end would not be much better than an egg. Apocalypse calculated the angle, and the sand under his feet suddenly exploded, making Ethan next to him choke on the sand. When he opened his eyes again, Apocalypse had jumped 200 meters in the air and caught Iron Man steadily. Once he saw that he was safe, Tony's unruly character became agitated again. "Hey, handsome guy, this is the first time I've been hugged like this. How about we go to a French restaurant to eat foie gras tonight?" Tianqi smiled and said, "Aren't you afraid that Xiaojiao will get jealous?" Before Tony could answer, Apocalypse suddenly threw him up again. Apocalypse could withstand the impact of a 200-meter free fall, but Tony could not. If Apocalypse hugged him and landed directly, he would not die but would be seriously injured. You can only throw him up again when he is about to land to relieve this force. Ah, I'm not afraid. After experiencing a high-altitude journey like a roller coaster, Tony's feet softened the moment he landed, and he sat directly on the desert regardless of the hot sand. Ha! Ethan, you're not dead, that's great. Tony hugged Ethan excitedly, and suddenly remembered. No, you were clearly shot several times just now, how could it be possible that nothing happened? Ethan looked at Tianqi. He gave me a bottle of potion, and I fully recovered. Thank you. Tony put away his unruly expression and said solemnly, "Thank you for saving my life, and thank you even more for saving Ethan." Ding. Iron Man luck sharing. 30%. Good guy, it only saved his life and the lives of his friends by 30%. Tony was too wary. Sure enough, smart people are difficult to get along with, Tianqi thought helplessly. However, it's not Tony's fault. The way Apocalypse appeared was really weird. After delivering food for more than a month, he still didn't save him. If it hadn't been for this accident, Tony didn't know how long he would have been imprisoned. Tell me, what is your purpose? As long as it doesn't violate my conscience, I will definitely agree. Tony said. There's no rush. Tianqi looked from a distance and found that a plane was already flying this way. Let's leave the place of right and wrong first. The Middle East has always been a war-torn country, with various forces and arms dealers intersecting with each other. There has been such a big movement here, and many forces have already sent people to investigate. Apocalypse held one in one hand, jumped a few times, and arrived at a city hundreds of kilometers away. Along the way, Tony and Ethan were blown away by the strong wind and could not even open their mouths. They could only look at each other with shock in their eyes. Is this person still human? A big jump of tens of kilometers, and it also took two people with it. There is also that magical potion that can bring Ethan back from the brink of death after being shot several times. With Tony's connections, he had never heard of such a miraculous drug. Otherwise, when he was poisoned by palladium later, he would not have had no choice but to rely on drinking plant drinks to relieve his symptoms. Arriving in a small city more than 100 kilometers away, Tianqi took the two of them to a simple rental house. Tianqi said, "There is no special purpose for saving you, but since you want to thank me, I may ask you for something in the future. Of course, I won't force you. If you don't want to, you can refuse." Tony said, "Then I will refuse now." Ha 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 ha. Tianqi laughed. He knew that Tony was not an ungrateful person. "If you really don't give it, I won't force you." As he said that, he took out a mobile phone and handed it to Tony. "Call Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes and ask him to pick you up. I will take Ethan away." "No, Ethan is my benefactor. I will invite him to the United States and work in my company without bothering you." "Tony, do you think this hijacking was an accident?" Tony was shocked. "Isn't it? You will know, but there is no rush now. You have just been missing for more than a month, and you have already caused an uproar in the United States. Now you are suddenly rescued, and you are accompanied by a person who used to work for violent elements. Guess what will happen? Although you I all know that Ethan was forced to work for the Ten Rings gang, but, does anyone else believe it?" With Tony's IQ, he would understand it as soon as he mentioned a few points. After being held hostage for so long and suddenly being released with Middle Eastern people around him, the most likely possibility was that he was being held hostage. You must know that Stark Industries manufactures weapons for the Ministry of Defense. As long as there is a slight possibility, the Ministry of Defense cannot rest assured. What's more, the arch-enemy Hammer Arms Company will definitely cause trouble. Don't talk about Ethan at that time, he might even be in danger. Tony said. I will transfer 500 million to you, please ensure Ethan's safety. Tianqi said calmly. Don't worry, if I didn't want to save him, I wouldn't have saved him just now. Ethan is an upright and kind-hearted person. Even though he lives in a war-torn country and his relatives have been killed by violent elements, he still maintains a positive attitude and does not complain about others. Instead, he lives an active life and persuades the people around him. This had a huge impact on Tony's character. What's more, he is also a good scientist. He actually used a car battery to hang Tony's life like a genius, and also assisted Tony in completing the manufacturing of armor. If placed in a prosperous and powerful country, he must be a great scientist. Apocalypse recruited him into his team, which not only added another talent, but also strengthened his connection with Tony. Apocalypse said to Ethan, "Do you want to go home and have a look? The town of Comila is nearby." Ethan was shocked. How do you know I'm from Comila? I never told you. Does it matter how I know? What matters is whether you want to go back and take a look. Tony and Ethan looked at each other and felt deeply that the Eastern man in front of them was too mysterious. Not only did he have superpowers, but he also seemed to know them well. This feeling of being understood is uncomfortable. Even though Apocalypse saved their lives, Tony's wariness has not been eliminated. Ethan said slowly, "It's really not important. With your energy, it is not difficult to know the information of a small person like me. There is no need to go back, I have nothing to worry about there. In the future, if you have the ability, you can help the residents of the town. It can be regarded as a match from the same hometown." Quote, "Let's go then." Apocalypse didn't look back, and took Ethan with him into the sky. Tony Jungjung was lost in thought for a while before calling Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes. After receiving the call, Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes immediately sent a fighter plane to escort Tony back to his country. It was rare for Tony to be quiet, and he was not as bohemian as when he came, with champagne, wine, and stewardess dancing. This encounter greatly touched him. Not only was he physically injured, but he also felt uneasy when he saw his weapons being used by violent elements. And that mysterious Oriental man, why didn't he save himself? But worried about dying. There was so much for him to think about. Back to America. A large number of reporters who had received the news blocked the airport. A top scientist, top tycoon and playboy was kidnapped by violent elements, and now he has finally returned to China. With such breaking news, who doesn't want to get first-hand information? When Tony gets off the plane, Pepper and his good friend and bodyguard Happy are already waiting for him. Pepper was about to burst into tears. She stepped forward and hugged Tony tightly and refused to let go. "I thought I would never see you again." Tony shrugged. "I'm not coming back now, don't cry, your makeup will be ruined." Happy said anxiously, "It's my turn." Seeing that little Pepper wouldn't let go, he simply dragged his fat body and hugged her. The three of them hugged each other, making Tony scream, "Ouch!" Pepper saw Tony's chest and said in shock, "What's going on? Are you injured? Let's go to the hospital quickly." Tony said, "Don't worry, I have more important things. Happy, buy me a cheeseburger. At the same time, arrange a press conference." Reporters were readily available and press conferences were arranged quickly. Tony sat imagelessly on the floor next to the podium with a cheeseburger in hand. Tony said, "Do you know? The best thing about food is not the food itself, but the environment. In the past month or so, I have eaten the best cheeseburgers and Orleans grilled chicken in the world in the cave. Now I'm back, eating the best burger, but it doesn't taste even 1/10 as good as the one in the cave. I want to thank the delivery man. He not only delivered me the most delicious food in the world, but also saved me and my benefactor. Although I don't know what his purpose is, I think that as long as he is not destroying world, and I will be willing to do whatever I can to repay him." There was a sudden buzz down there, and everyone was whispering to each other, what was Tony talking about? Why is it a burger and a delivery boys? Did we get the wrong wind? Finally, a reporter couldn't help it anymore. "Mr. Tony, with all due respect, were you kidnapped or went on vacation?" Tony said, "I was indeed kidnapped and imprisoned in a cave for more than a month. I was attacked by a bomb, and there are still shrapnel in my chest. I am now relying on a battery to sustain my life. There was an explosion underneath. It was just speculation before, but now it was confirmed by Tony himself. The reporters couldn't help but be surprised. The hegemony pursued by the United States around the world, frequently bombing other countries and assassinating generals and leaders of other countries, has offended too many people, and violent attacks are a lingering nightmare for them. Now even wealthy people like Tony are being kidnapped under the protection of the military, which makes them even more insecure. A beautiful reporter stood up and asked, "Excuse me, what's going on with that takeaway guy? Are the violent people still ordering takeout?" Tony said, "I don't know any more than you. I can't go into details for now. Now, what I want to say is another major decision." As soon as they heard about the big news, everyone had no choice but to suppress their curiosity and no longer pursue the matter of the delivery man. Tony continued, "I didn't get to say goodbye to my father. I always had some questions I wanted to ask him. Did he ever struggle or doubt? I saw young Americans being killed, and I was the one who killed them. Weapons made to protect them. I realized I could do more for the world than just create explosions. Therefore, I declare that the Weapons Production Department of Stark International Corporation will be closed down, effective immediately." The scene fell silent and then exploded. Reporters rushed forward frantically to ask further questions. But Tony was tired and stopped answering and left under Happy's escort. Apocalypse here. He arranged for Ethan to be assigned to Dr. Stern. When the two scientists met, they sympathized with each other and hit it off. After seeing Tony's decision on the news, Apocalypse knew that after returning, Tony would perfect the iron suit. Sure enough, a few days later, taking advantage of the darkness, a humanoid suit flew out of Tony's house. Tianchi was sitting in an open-air bar in the distance, drinking beer casually. This initial model should be the steel suit Mk1 model. It hadn't even been painted yet, and the original silver-white metal color was exposed. However, Mk1 is immature and has a fatal flaw: it has no antifreeze system. Sure enough, Tony tested the flying height of the suit and began to fly as high as possible. 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 30,000 feet, 80,000 feet. Artificial intelligence Jarvis reminded, "Master, potentially fatal ice has appeared." Tony, "Go on, I haven't broken the fixed wing altitude record of 8.5 feet yet." Soon, the low temperature at high altitude caused a thick layer of ice to form on the suit, and the power system inside suddenly shut down due to the low temperature. "Oh!" Tony screamed and fell from the sky. Apocalypse is unmoved. According to the original plot, the power system should be restored when it is close to landing, and Tony will fly back safe and sound. Ha, ha, ha. Tony kept trying to restart the power system, but only a few puffs of black smoke came out, to no avail. "Oops," Tianchi said secretly. A strong wind blew up from the open-air bar, knocking the tables and chairs to the ground, and Apocalypse disappeared in place. Boom. Unfortunately, it was too far away. No matter how fast Apocalypse was, he couldn't catch it in time. Tony fell straight to the ground, creating a deep pit. Apocalypse flashed several times, came to the deep pit, and with a bang, ripped off the mask of Tony's suit. Ahem. Hey, we meet again. Tony was vomiting blood, and it was obvious that the blow was serious. He was originally worried about whether he would die, but when he saw the apocalypse coming, he felt inexplicably safe. Tianchi smiled. "Why are you so unlucky every time I see you? I thought I could see you acting cool this time." At this time, Jarvis's prompt sounded. "Injury diagnosis. The spine is broken into 3 parts, both legs are fractured, the internal organs are cracked, and are bleeding. The emergency number of the nearest hospital has been called, but it will take at least 20 minutes. Master, I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on until then." Tony's mouth kept foaming with blood, which was a sign that his lungs had been punctured. At this time, he had difficulty breathing. Tianchi flashed his hand and took out a bottle of recovery potion from the storage compartment. "Drink. I am also responsible for your injuries." Tony was greatly moved, thinking that Apocalypse felt guilty for not being able to catch him in time, and hurriedly said, "Ahem. How can I blame you?" Ahem. Cough. I was too impatient. However, Tony's understanding was wrong. No matter how genius he was, he could not imagine the meaning of Apocalypse. Tony was supposed to stay in the cave for 3 months. Although these 3 months were difficult, it gave him enough time to think about the details of the suit and polish it to maturity. The arrival of Apocalypse unexpectedly allowed Tony to escape from trouble more than a month early, resulting in the omission of some technical details. The omitted details caused the power system to be slightly worse than the original plot, which in turn led to Tony not landing safely and falling half to death. If Apocalypse hadn't been nearby, Iron Man might have died before he was officially born. The butterfly effect, Tianchi sighed inwardly. Any small change may cause major changes in the plot later on. It seems that I have to be more careful. Otherwise, you never know when the plot will change and some superheroes will unexpectedly die. You drink it first, and if it's a few minutes later, you won't even have a chance to speak. With that said, he poured the recovery potion into Tony and drank it. A burst of green light lit up around Tony, and in the blink of an eye, Tony's injuries had all recovered. Apocalypse took a closer look at the arc reactor on his chest and found that it had not been repaired. It seems that it is what Dr. Stern said. The medicine determines that these old injuries are already part of the body and will not be repaired. Tony said, "Is this potion the one for Ethan to drink?" "It's amazing. It can repair injuries instantly. If it can be mass-produced, I'm afraid no one on the earth will be afraid of getting hurt anymore. I do think it is a pity that the quantity of this thing is limited and it cannot be produced at the moment." Tony was right when he thought about it. It was really unlikely that such a magical thing would be as popular as cold medicine. Tony wanted to stand up, but found that after losing power, the suit was too heavy, and with his physical strength, he couldn't stand up at all. The Mk1 model is still made of ordinary steel. In the original plot, Tony flew home, turned off the power, smashed through the cement floor, and fell into the underground laboratory. You can imagine how heavy this suit is. "Let me help you open it," Tianchi said. "Wait." Tony hurriedly stopped. "We can't dismantle it forcefully. I want to check if there is any fault inside. As soon as I dismantle it, the fault site will be destroyed." "It seems that I have to hug you back again," Tianchi said helplessly. "I have never hugged the same man twice in my life, so I have to pay extra." With that said, he picked up Tony by the waist and jumped towards Tony's home. As soon as I got home, I met little Pepper. Seeing the blood between Tony's mouth and nose, Pepper screamed in fright. "Ah! Tony, how are you? Send him to the hospital quickly." Tony said, "I'm fine, I'm just stuck in this iron lump and can't get out." "There's so much blood, how can it be okay? You don't want to explain the funeral, do you?" Little Pepper couldn't help crying. Apocalypse is helpless, women love to cry, so it is better to have their own Black Widow, at least she won't scream at every turn. Ignoring Pepper's nonsense, Apocalypse hugged Tony, broke into the underground laboratory, threw it to the ground, and left the rest to the laboratory's robotic arm. With the help of the robotic arm, Tony finally escaped and said to Pepper, "This is the delivery person I told you, Tang Tianchi. This is my friend and assistant, Piper Potts. You call her Pepper. That's it. Thank you for saving Tony, twice." Little Pepper was tall, and with the support of high heels, she was almost as tall as Tianchi. She took the initiative to reach out and shake hands with Tianchi, her eyes full of curiosity as she looked at Tianchi. Tony trusted Pepper very much and never hid anything from Pepper, no matter how confidential it was. Of course, Pepper knew what happened in the cave. However, after thinking about it, the two still couldn't figure out Tianchi's intention. After shaking hands, little Pepper said, "I'm going to the company to handle some affairs on Tony's behalf these days. Why don't Mr. Tang stay here for a few days? We haven't repaid you yet." Before Apocalypse could agree, Tony jumped up. No, I like purity. Dawn, I'm not targeting you." This is true, Tianchi understands Tony's character. In such a big villa, only Tony and Pepper live there, not even a servant. Normally, when Tony brings women from outside to spend the night, it is Pepper who helps deliver clothes and take out the trash. Little Pepper said to Tony, "Do you like peace and quiet, or do you like flying around? If it hadn't been for Mr. Tang this time, your life would have been lost." "Anyway, I don't agree," Tianchi said. "I happen to have a house to renovate, so I can take a look at your design. Xiaojiao, please arrange a big room for me." "No problem," Tony shouted. Hey, do you still think of me as the master in your eyes? Forget it. Don't arrange the room too close to me, I like peace and quiet." Little Pepper didn't listen to him at all, so she arranged the nearest guest room for Tianchi. She worked hard, fearing that something would happen to Tony again. With such a mysterious and powerful person like Tianchi beside him, Xiao Lai Lao felt a lot more at ease. Apocalypse himself is fine, and Black Widow doesn't reply to his messages. It's the same wherever he lives. Here, it is also very good to see Tony build the steel suit step by step. Tony spent the whole day in the underground laboratory, and Apocalypse went to see it a few times, which was quite boring. Polishing a mecha is a very tedious task. The movie only shows the most exciting scenes, but the actual development process is very boring. Tony often didn't speak for a whole day, sitting in front of the computer thinking about calculations. After a few days, Tony finally perfected the MK2 model. The MK2 model has changed all the flaws of the original MK1 model. It is not only anti-freeze, but also uses lighter and harder titanium alloy. The flight speed is greatly improved, and there will no longer be the embarrassment of flying home and smashing through the floor. To this end, Tony officially spray-painted his suit a sultry golden red. With the masterpiece finished, Tony decides to go to a party to relax. He wanted to call Tianchi, but Tianchi was busy with other things and was not interested in this kind of Western cocktail party. He had no companions. At the party, a beautiful female reporter showed Tony some photos, showing that Stark was still selling weapons, and that these weapons were still killing civilians. The location is in a small town called Comila in the Middle East. Just a few days after announcing the closure of the weapons department, it was slapped in the face. Tony looked gloomy, returned home, found Tianchi, and asked, "Don, is Ethan's hometown called Comila?" "Yes. Did you find that there are a large number of weapons sold without your authorization?" "That's right." Tony was a little surprised. "You also know about this?" "This is not the point. The point is, have you really decided to destroy these weapons and rescue civilians?" Tony's body trembled. "How do you know what I'm thinking?" It's not too strange to say that Tianchi knows the news about weapons. After all, an ordinary reporter can get photos. It doesn't seem to be difficult for a mysterious and powerful person like Tianchi to know this information. The scary thing is that Tony's idea to destroy the weapons just came to him suddenly on the way home. It was impossible for anyone to know about it, but he actually knew it. Who is this Oriental in front of me? Could it be possible to read minds? Tony, it's not difficult to guess what you are thinking. The key is, what is your choice? Tony drank a glass of wine and said, "Some things must be done, otherwise my conscience will be uneasy." With that said, he walked down to the underground laboratory. At this time, the steel suit was still relatively primitive. Wearing it on the body required a set of mechanical arms, which was a complicated and time-consuming process. After a few minutes, Tony put on the golden and red suit and walked to Apocalypse with one step. "Don't tell Pepper." Tianchi said, "If I don't tell you, you can't hide it from her. Go ahead. If you run into trouble when you come back, you can call me." "Call." Tony stopped talking and flew directly out of the window and disappeared under the sky. Flying at full speed along the way, a white sonic boom cloud formed outside the suit, first surrounding Tony, and then quickly being left behind. Apocalypse is not worried about Comila Town and his group. Tony's suit is completely crushing. Not only did he blow up all the weapons produced by Stark, but he also killed the violent elements in one fell swoop. Even the tanks were no match for a small micro-missile in the suit. After cleaning up everything, Tony threw the leader who massacred civilians in front of the terrified civilians and let them deal with it. In fact, this is also meant to test the refugees. It is understandable that they did not dare to resist in the past because they were struggling to survive. Now violent elements are coming to your homes to massacre and do whatever they want. If you don't dare to kill, Tony doesn't want to care about life or death in the future. Soon, the leader was overwhelmed by angry civilians. After processing, Tony flew back. However, it is easy to go out but hard to come back. The United States does not strictly monitor outgoing aircraft, but is very vigilant about unidentified aircraft entering its territory. Not long after Tony arrived at the border, he was discovered by ground radar. Immediately, two F-2 fighter jets took off and hung behind Tony. After a chase, Tony's friend, Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes, later known as War Machine, keenly sensed something was wrong. This style and technique were too much like Tony. So, I immediately called Tony. There is a humanoid aircraft in the airspace of my base. It can't be you, right? Tony said. How is that possible? I'm still taking a bath at home. Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes said. That's good, we're going to shoot it down. Call. A tracking missile was launched from the side of the F-22 fighter plane, and Tony hurriedly sent out dozens of decoy bombs to cover it. Boom. The tracking missile hit the decoy bomb and exploded, setting off a fireball in the sky. Then, another fighter plane clung tightly behind Tony, and its machine gun sprayed out 2 tongues of flame. Tony was unable to dodge and his suit was hit in the back. Since he couldn't escape by speed, Tony had a flash of inspiration, spread his limbs in midair, made a sudden stop on behalf of air resistance, and hid under the bottom of the plane. However, he could only hide for a while, and soon Tony was discovered by another fighter plane. In the original plot, Tony took the initiative to call Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes and ask to be let go, and finally narrowly escaped. To this end, Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes also held a press conference, saying that it was a military exercise and an F-22 fighter jet was damaged. But due to the arrival of the apocalypse and the same dilemma, the person Tony turned to change. Soon, Tianchi received a call from Tony. Don, are you a prophet? How do you know I will be in trouble when I come back? Tianchi laughed. Ha 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 ha, let me think about it. They are 2 F-2 fighters, and you can't beat them, right? At this time, the steel suit was relatively rudimentary, with more than enough flexibility, but not enough speed, and its frontal firepower was no match for the most advanced F-22 fighter. Just in terms of volume, the amount of weapons stored is incomparable. You are absolutely right. Come and save me, otherwise I will die for the 3rd time. Hold on for a while, and I'll see what you have at home. Apocalypse looked around the hall, then jumped towards the American border with 2 medieval antique spears. Apocalypse's strength is 3 times greater than that of the Hulk, and his weight is much lighter. In addition, when he jumps, he doesn't jump like a big stupid cow. He makes full use of aerodynamics and reduces resistance. The distance and speed of his jumps are far greater. Beyond the Hulk. With the help of terrifying takeoff power, Apocalypse is like a cannon popping out of the chamber every time, exploding sonic booms directly in the air, jumping hundreds of kilometers. After several big jumps, Tianchi saw 2 fighters with big black spots in the distance. Tianchi said, Tony, lower the flight altitude and guide the fighter plane down. It is good. Tony didn't hesitate, his body folded in his suit, and he rushed down quickly. The fighter plane thought that the humanoid aircraft in front of it was about to escape, so it quickly lowered its altitude and followed it to attack. Airborne bullets as thick as fingers poured down from the sky, splashing little bits of dust around Tianchi. On the ground, Apocalypse did not dodge or avoid, calculating the distance and speed. Whoa, whoa, 2 slender afterimages appeared in a flash. Boom, boom. The spear hit the power compartment at the tail of the 2 fighter planes accurately. A large plume of black smoke suddenly appeared from the tail. The plane lost power and began to circle. The pilot had no choice but to eject to escape. By the time the pilot landed, Tony and Apocalypse had already disappeared without a trace. Soon, the rescue crew arrived and couldn't believe it when they saw the 2 spears embedded in the engines of the 2 F-22 fighter jets. What he saw was sent back to the base, and the general of the base was so angry that he cursed, "Are you kidding me? The F-22 was shot down by 2 spears. Are we going to war with primitive people? I want to go to the scene to see it in person." When he saw the wreckage of the fighter plane, everyone including Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes became uneasy and looked at each other, speechless for a long time. Spear, spear, a simple spear, embedded in the engine of the fighter plane, black smoke is still rising. The contrast between the most advanced and the most primitive is extremely dazzling. 2 of the most advanced F-2s were shot down by spears. Who would believe this? Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes refused to give up and asked, who made this spear a black technology? A technician shook his head after inspecting it. Lieutenant Colonel, judging from its hardness and flexibility, I'm afraid it is ordinary steel. High school principal Rhodes sighed, oh my God, 2 F-2 fighter jets were lost. I'm afraid the White House knows about such a major matter. Do you really want to write in the report that he was shot down by 2 ordinary Changyu? I can't write this report. Back to the lab, Tony was in a much better mood. He had done something for heaven and was very happy. However, he did not know that Obadiah Stane, vice president of Stark Company who secretly sold weapons, became more determined to eliminate Tony after learning the news. Obadiah Stane was one of those extremely smart bald men. He was originally Tony's father's partner and Tony's elder. He didn't hold many shares, but his ambitions were not small. Originally, Tony's energy was all spent on scientific research and women, and he was not very interested in company management, which allowed him to monopolize power. Now Tony suddenly announced that he would close the weapons department, which had violated his rights and interests. However, he was a small shareholder and could not resist. Tianqi knew the inside story, but after thinking about it, he decided not to tell it unless Tony asked, so as not to change the plot. After all, Tony and the others had nothing to lose in the original plot. "Tony, I want a suit like this," Tony said. "You are so strong, what's the use of having a suit?" "Flying," Tianqi said. "Although I can jump very fast, I am not as fast as your suit over long distances, and jumping around is not elegant." Tony joked. "I didn't expect you to be a gentleman, Tang, but how could a gentleman force himself to live in someone else's home regardless of the owner's objection?" "Haha, not only do I have to force myself to eat for free, but I also want to take it for free. However, I don't want what you are wearing now. MK2 is too backward. It is very inconvenient to wear and requires the assistance of several robotic arms." Tony was speechless. Just now, he singled out two F2 fighters with a set of armor, and he actually said he was lagging behind. "Then what do you want?" Tianqi thought for a while and said, "First, it must be easy to wear and carry. It is best not to exceed one suitcase. If it cannot be carried easily, it is meaningless to me. It is better to jump faster. Second, it must strengthen the flight power. My body is stronger than you are strong and don't care about the gravity pressure caused by strong acceleration. The instantaneous acceleration can be very violent. It's not difficult to accelerate." Tony said, "I just increase the power. But it's a bit troublesome to make the volume the size of a suitcase. I may need a little time. Then I'll wait for you, I believe you will do it." Suitcase-sized suits were made in Iron Man 2 inches, and later there are stronger and more miniature nano-suits that can even challenge Thanos in a duel. However, even a genius like Iron Man must take his time and not rush. At this moment, Jarvis AI's voice came. "Sir, Miss Potts' phone number was lost." The last recording was her scream. After saying that, Pepper's voice came from the loudspeaker. "Notify Tony, ah." Tony's expression changed. "Oh no, Pepper has been discovered." "What happened?" Tony called up some weapons photos. "The weapons I found in the Middle East last time were produced by our company, but I have clearly ordered the disbandment of the weapons department. There must be insiders secretly selling weapons. So I sent little Pepper to the company to investigate. Unexpectedly, she was put in danger." "Who is the mole?" Apocalypse smiled. "Who else could it be? Think about it, in Stark Company, who else can secretly sell weapons without hiding it from you?" Tony made it clear. "You mean Uncle Obadiah Stane, who is my father's partner and has watched me grow up. How could it be possible? This is impossible. As long as interests are involved, nothing is impossible. Just wait for a while and there will be news soon." "I can't wait. What will happen to little Pepper? I have to save her right away." "Don't worry, she won't be in danger until you hand over the design drawings of the arc reactor." "No, he's here." As he said that, the surveillance showed that a luxury car came outside Tony's mansion, and the person who came was none other than the bald Obadiah Stanley. "I'll leave you to face him alone and see his true face clearly." As he said that, his figure flashed and disappeared from Tony's eyes. The bald man came in, chatted casually with Tony, and asked insinuatingly about the reactor on Tony's chest. After being reminded by Apocalypse, Tony was already on guard. He didn't talk about Pepper's disappearance, only that the arc reactor was not perfect yet. The bald man made insinuations and repeated clichés, but when Tony saw that he wouldn't let go, he simply stopped pretending. Suddenly a harsh sound wave came out, and Tony immediately collapsed on the sofa. The big bald man took out a small instrument and said, "This is the latest weapon, an ultrasonic screwdriver. It can use ultrasonic energy to cause muscle resonance and paralyze an elephant instantly. Uncle, what are you doing? The bald man said. Originally, I wanted to wait for you to perfect the arc reactor before taking action, and I never thought about killing you. But you absolutely should not have sent Little Pepper to investigate me. I had no choice but to take action in advance. With that said, he opened Tony's shirt, twisted the micro-reactor inside to the right, and pulled it off. Tony lost energy support, his heartbeat suddenly stopped, lung activity lost energy support, and he began to have difficulty breathing. The big bald man held the arc reactor and said intoxicatedly, "What a masterpiece. This will be your most outstanding legacy, Tony. The king of weapons of the new generation. With it as power, our company's weapons can be sold all over the world. Everyone who uses our suit must buy it as a source of power. Our company will become the center of world power. Ha 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 ha, it's a pity that you can't see it anymore." The big bald man put the arc reactor into a suitcase and walked away. At this time, Tony's body was affected by the ultrasonic screwdriver and had not yet recovered. In addition, his heart had lost power and he had already lost the strength to get up. Apocalypse slowly appeared. Tony held on and smiled bitterly. "Are you prepared to watch me die? I thought you'd get up on your own. There's a prototype arc reactor downstairs. I can't move." In the original plot, Tony climbed to the downstairs laboratory alone, and with the help of a robotic arm, installed the prototype of the arc reactor. But somewhere went wrong, and Tony couldn't move. In other words, Tony knows that the apocalypse is in front of him, and his motivation to survive is not that strong. Tony's face was getting more and more purple in front of him, and Apocalypse couldn't think more about it. Stomping on the ground, with a boom, a big hole was opened in the ground, and Tony and the sofa fell directly into the underground laboratory. Looking around, I quickly spotted a prototype arc reactor decorated with little peppers. Apocalypse directly crushed the glass shell and installed it for Tony. Hiss. Tony took a long breath and gradually recovered. At the same time, there was a ding in Tianqi's mind. Save one life and reward one bottle of recovery potion. Apocalypse couldn't help but be a little surprised. Judging from the system's judgment, if he didn't help, Tony would really die. It seems that the impact of the butterfly effect cannot be ignored. Tony looked at Apocalypse strangely. "How come you know everything? If I didn't know that you are so powerful that there is no need to play these conspiracies, I would even suspect that you are the mastermind behind it." "Haha, the secret must not be leaked. Why didn't you catch him just now?" Tony asked. "If we catch him, how can we save Little Pepper? Let's just follow him." Tony suddenly realized. "Leave it to me to track him." As he said that, he opened the holographic image, which soon showed traces of the bald car. In fact, you don't need to follow Tianqi to know that Baldy is back to the company. However, in order to prevent the butterfly effect, it is safer to follow Baldy's car. Tony put on his suit and flew out. At this time, Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes called. "Tony, Pepper just called and notified 5 agents to go to your company, but now her phone cannot be reached. Do you know what's going on?" Tony said. "It's my Uncle Stanny who did it. Pepper is probably going to arrest him. I'm on my way to find him now. Can I help you with anything? Clear the airspace. If you find something flying in the sky, don't interfere with me. By the way, if you find someone jumping around in the sky, don't mess with him." "Ah, jumping around in the sky." Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes was a little confused. If there are aircraft in the sky, it would not be surprising given Tony's technological strength, but what the hell is that flying around in the sky? "And you warned us not to mess with him. Is there anyone in the world that the US military cannot afford to offend?" Tianqi didn't know their conversation. For the safety of others and accurate landing, he controlled his power and only jumped a few hundred meters at a time, rising and falling quickly, hiding in the night. Tony was much more high profile. The tail flames emitted by his suit were extremely eye-catching in the night and were quickly detected by the military. Fortunately, Tony said hello in advance, otherwise there would be fighter planes coming to intercept him. The bald-headed luxury car drifted and stopped in front of the Stark Company building. He didn't even lock the door and hurried upstairs. "Don, according to the infrared scan, Pepper is locked in the basement, surrounded by a dozen armed men. These are Stark's security forces. Pepper will trouble you, and Steny will leave it to me. After all, he has a very deep connection with my family, so for me to end it is an explanation to my father. Okay, just be careful. The combat effectiveness of the bald man's equipment may not be worse than yours. After saying that, the two parted ways. Apocalypse broke into the underground floor based on the hologram given by Tony. As soon as I got down to the first floor, I found several agents holding guns in their hands, and they moved forward cautiously. Apparently they came to rescue Pepper. Apocalypse took a look and found an old acquaintance inside, Coulson. Coulson is an extremely important character in the Marvel Universe. Although he is not a superhero, he is involved in many major events. In the end, he died at the hands of Loki, but before dying, he blasted Loki with an energy cannon. In another timeline, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he became the director and led another group of super-powered people to resist Hydra and various villains, including Skye, the Shockwave girl that Apocalypse liked very much. Hey, Coulson, Shua, Shua, Shua. The highly nervous agents all turned their guns to point at Tianchi. Coulson asked, "Who are you? You don't know who I am. Didn't Director Fury tell you? His battle with the Abomination Giant and the Hulk in the streets of New York should have been recorded in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files. Doesn't Coulson have the authority to know? What level of confidentiality did Fury set for his files? However, this seems to be in line with his style of doing things. Fury is extremely cautious in his work. In the original plot of Avengers 1, he sent Captain America, Black Widow and others to rescue a S.H.I.E.L.D. ship. Black Widow secretly arranged a secret mission that even Captain America didn't know about. As a result, he was discovered by the captain and had a quarrel with Fury after he came back, saying that his arrangement would endanger the team. It can be imagined that Fury's behavior is extremely cautious. I am afraid that my own file has not been opened to Coulson. Sir, no matter who you are, please step back and leave immediately, otherwise, we will regard you as a threat. Coulson said. It's up to you, but if you keep dawdling like this, when will you be able to find little Pepper? With that said, Apocalypse passed directly over Coulson and others. Coulson yelled, "Kick, tat tat tat." Several bullets hit Apocalypse in the leg. American agents are indeed overbearing and will shoot at the slightest disobedience. If they hadn't known that Coulson was a decent person, Apocalypse would have thrown them out. But now it's important to save Pepper, and Apocalypse doesn't have much to do, so he just stepped on it. Boom! The ground collapsed directly. When they reached the second underground floor, Tianchi kicked him again. Boom! In less than 5 seconds, it broke through 2 floors and reached the lowest basement. Ta 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 tats. This time it was not Coulson who fired, but the security guard guarding Pepper. Ha! Eat everything inside and outside. Apocalypse didn't dodge. He approached an armed security guard with a single stride, snatched the MP5 from his hand, squeezed it, and it turned into a piece of scrap metal. They took Stark's salary, but kidnapped their own people. It was obvious that they were already in cahoots with the bald man, so Apocalypse was no longer polite. He stretched out his big hand, clasped tightly around the security guard's neck, and lifted the whole person up. With a clever shake of his hand, all the joints on the security guard's body were dislocated, and his body fell limply to the ground, no longer able to fight. These days of training were indeed not in vain. Although he could not improve his combat power much, at least he was not like the Hulk, who could only violently smash. Tat tat tat. Another burst of bullets hit Tianchi like raindrops. Although he couldn't hurt himself, he still felt pain. Tianchi became increasingly angry and smashed his hands on the ground. Roar! The ground exploded, and the violent force knocked all the armed security guards away, causing them to fall to the ground unconscious. Apocalypse smiles, but violence comes directly. No wonder the Hulk always likes to smash things around. It feels so good to smash everything. Little Pepper was locked in a storage room, and Tianchi said to the inside, "Stand against the wall, I'm going to break down the door." With a loud boom, the thick steel door flew and hit the opposite wall. "Tony asked me to come rescue you, are you okay?" Pepper said. "I'm fine, where is Tony?" "He went to settle the score with the big bald man. Let's go out first. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time." As he said that, he held little Pepper's slender waist and jumped up. landing just in front of Coulson. Looking at the muzzles of several guns in front of him, Tianqi frowned and said, "Are you sure you want to shoot again? I'm not always such a good-tempered person." Coulson hurriedly signaled the other agents to put down their guns. In just a few dozen seconds from the time he saw Tianqi had been shot at least hundreds of times. Except for his clothes being a little torn, nothing happened. At this time, to anger him without any thought is simply to seek death. Moreover, Apocalypse rescued Pepper, who should be one of his own. He just seemed to mention the director. He returned to the bureau and asked the director who this person was. Thinking of this, Coulson said to God, "Thank you for your help, Miss Potts, let's leave quickly." At this time, there was a shaking sound outside. Apparently, Tony was also fighting with the big bald man outside. The street outside Stark Industries. It was already a mess, with broken wreckage everywhere. Many pedestrians were screaming, and the battle between Tony and the big bald man had extended to the highway in the distance, smashing countless cars along the way. In order to save the mother and children in a car, Tony fell into a passive position and was beaten by the big bald head. The bald head passed through the mecha and made a rough voice. "For so many years, I have been supporting you, but I have been working tirelessly in the company. Otherwise, you think you can run the company well by being a playboy and sleeping with women everywhere. Really, now, you want to take away my decades of hard work." Paw, paw, paw. The huge mechanical legs stepped on Tony's body on the ground one by one. Fortunately, Tony's mecha is not a vegetarian. Although it was beaten to the point where it was unable to resist, it could at least protect itself. Boom. The big bald man picked up Tony and threw it on a bus, which was blocked and smashed through. Call out. A small missile was launched from the bald mecha and bombed the bus. Tony was blown high into the air. If it weren't for the strong defense of the suit, he would have been shocked to death. Such a big movement has long been noticed by the military. A military correspondent was about to notify the relevant departments when Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes stopped him and said, "No, this is just an exercise. Just keep observing." This was very painful for Tony. He originally thought that his suit could crush the bald man, so he asked Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes not to interfere. Unexpectedly, although the bald mecha was not as advanced as him, its weapons and equipment were way behind him, so no one came to help now. After all, the original intention of the big bald mecha was to kill, which was different from Tony's direction. Seeing that the situation was not good, Tony had an idea and directly ordered, "Jarvis, let me lift off with all your strength." "Sir, your power is only 15% left. I'm afraid." "I know, do it." Suddenly, the suit emitted white flames and flew towards the sky. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.